Well, this is something new. This is something very, very new. I normally don't do this kind of thing. I really don't. The reason I'm doing this is because, for those of you, most people, I'm gonna guess, who don't really know me all that well, is I've been part of the DSP detractor community for a very long time, like probably for the past like 8 years. So I've been following this piece of shit. But this in particular was something that I decided I wanted to do. I wanted to do a reaction to his Elden Ring review because Philly Boy here doesn't really seem to understand how games are made, how mechanics work, or the Soulsborne franchise in general, or how FromSoft likes to do things. And so I thought it'd be a fun experiment to just see, what he says point for point and discuss the things that he has said and how he might possibly be wrong about them. This isn't really to critique Phil's gameplay itself. There are enough people that have done that. I've watched several people who do that. This isn't about that. It really isn't. What this is about is the fact that Phil does not know how to does not really know how to critique the game that he just played. The Within the context of what I will be talking about, though, there are a few things just play misunderstandings from him that do not take his playthrough into account. But to clear out some stuff regarding his playthrough, Phil beat the game, obviously using guides. I can't tell you which guides, but he obviously used them. We have screenshots of his private mod Discord where there was a specific channel called Elden Ring Library, where this probably contained a lot of text guides and video guides on how to do certain bosses, how to create certain builds, basically how to walk himself through the game whenever his viewers were not being particularly helpful at any given time. This is also obvious in his gameplay because there have been times where he will just be gone on an extended break doing whatever. Again, there are other people in the detractor community who can tell you what he's doing. I'm not going to do that, but yes, he is totally doing those things. It it really is just like he comes back from the break and he knows exactly how to beat a boss that was giving it trouble for the past hour and a half, which that can happen sometimes. It's happened to myself on my own gameplay streams sometimes where I've taken a break and gotten a like breath of fresh air or something like that, but and then come back a bit more refreshed, a bit calmer about how to tackle something. But usually it's just me getting better at the execution of what I was already doing, and I'm no longer tilted. I've given my hands a break, whatever the case may be. And in some cases, yes, I have also looked up guides for some of the stuff that I'm playing. I am quite shameless about it for some of the games that I play. On this very channel, there is a playthrough of Persona 5, and I had made very clear that I was using a day-by-day guide in order to get every single confidant ranked up. I didn't really use guides for the boss fights, and I didn't use guides for the puzzles because they were easy enough on their own. But I did use a guide for the day-by-day activities because I wanted to see every single confidant, max them all up to rank 10, and play the game that way. But I was quite shameless about it. I admit to doing that. The problem with Phil is that he does not admit to using guides. Aside from that, he is also incredibly over leveled for whatever area he was in. And I'm not talking like 10 levels. He was over leveled by either nearly double or towards the end of the game by at least 40. For example, he faced Melania when he was like a level 154. The recommended level to face Melania at is around 110. So that's still being a bit too overpowered for that encounter in general. He just had that much leveling on him. That's another thing to consider because part of his criticism that we'll get into later on is the fact that he found the game too easy towards the tail end of the game, despite the fact that he had died over the course of the game 875 times while over leveled while using guides. So this is mostly a critique of both his talking points and somewhat of his gameplay and how he approached the game and how they could have informed his opinions. But mostly it's just a talking points because anybody could tell you by looking at his gameplay that he did not play the game properly and that he did not know what he was doing while playing the game. Again, plenty of other channels doing that, which is why there's like I think 2 This Is How You Don't Plays on it right now. One that's obviously going to be made by The Outsider. Big ups to that guy. And then another This Is How You Don't Play, which is actually being done in chunks over several weeks. and it's on part 8. I apologize for not knowing your name, buddy, but I have been watching those This Is How You Don't Plays, and you are really, really good at editing. That's like some of the best DSP content I've ever seen. You actually make him look like an entertaining streamer somehow. But before we begin on his review, let's go over some stuff about his channel in general, just to see what he could do in general for what this video is. Now, again, I don't actually watch DSP's channel itself. I usually watch his stuff through detractors. But let's go down and see what we have here. So first of all, this title, why Elden Ring is not a perfect 10 and honest review after 122 hours. This part is not needed. We do not need to know how long you have played the game when you're talking about it. You can put that stuff in the description below the fold if you really want to. You could just say Elden Ring honest review and then put colon, not a perfect 10. That's fine. I don't know why he phrases his videos like this. They seem like, it seems like he's trying to get like clickbait titles off of them, but he does not know how clickbait titles work, or he doesn't know how like informative titles work, because Angry Joe did a review on Elden Ring, and it was just an Elden Ring angry review, because people know to expect angry review as part of the title, is the name of the series, front and center when you first see Joe's reviews. Simple as that. Now, what is in his description? Fucking nothing. There's nothing here. There's nothing here. Join the channel to get access to perks. That is his link to his membership, which there's already a join button right here. This part is completely useless. Please consider leaving a tip to support the channel. Thank you in advance. This is his Stream Elements link, obviously. Why anybody will give him Stream Elements money outside of his streams, I have no idea. That's not really the point of Stream Elements. You usually get them to see the pop-up on the stream itself, and plenty of people do that. I am not going to get into my opinion of those people, but plenty of people do that for various reasons, and you do not need to have this in the description overview. The description should contain a basic overall description of the video, and maybe some links to his social media accounts that he has, because he has a Twitter account, even though it's also damn near useless. If he has an Instagram account, he could link it there. He could do whatever he wants to. I don't know why I'm critiquing his channel. That's somebody better suited for business to goes to. And I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, because I don't do YouTube for a living, yet I somehow know more about this stuff than anything else. Also, 111 likes. We can't see dislikes because I do not have the extension that allows you to see that, but I'm going to guess there's more of those than there are 111 likes. And 2.4K views. For a channel of his size, nearly 200,000 subscribers, that is pathetic. Just saying that, Philly boy. All right. Going further down. This is me. Probably my favorite view of this game. This is a bait. This is an obvious bait to see if he would get, to see if this would actually get through his filter so that he could actually post it on the video. I have looked at it and it has not. He did not approve of my comment. Probably because I also talk shit about him in the replies to other comments, and you might have seen those. But let's look at this other stuff, because he actually did comment on some of the stuff here. And there's also a clear terms of service violation too. Let's see. 10 does not mean a perfect for many people. No game is literally perfect. And for some people, the flaws can be vastly outweighed by the positives for them, leading to people thinking / feeling a 10 out of 10 for them. We'll get into this later about Phil's opinion on 10 out of 10 review scores, because he goes off on a tangent during this review for it, even though it has no place in a review of the game. He just decides to have a dig at journalists because he can. Elden Ring is a spiritual successor to Dark Souls, just like how Bloodborne was a riff on Dark Souls. They have a successful formula, and making new series will bring in new fans, which clearly worked in their favor. It's not a perfect game, but one of the best in recent years. That's just random comment, general comment. That's fine. Congratulations. I love this one. Congratulations on challenging yourself by not abusing one mechanic the entire game and overleveling and looking up guides, Phil. I forgot to mention, yeah, he did nothing but jump attack spam his entire playthrough. He was overleveled, he jump attack spam, and he used guys for pretty much every single thing in the game, including his builds. And even when he used guys for the builds, all he did was jump attack spam with the builds, even if the build suggested doing things otherwise with them. Like, I don't know, using the weapon arts or using different spells for them. He used a Dark Knight magic build, which required you to actually have, I think, a staff in your offhand and the blade in your main hand or something like that. And then buff and to do spells. Again, I did not play Elden Ring. I do know this build exists. But from what I recall, what people have told me, he put the weapons in the wrong hands, and all he did was jump attack spam with them. He did not actually use them properly as far as buffing his weapons go. And he wonders why the build didn't work out that well. And then, of course, there are people that have followed him too, yeah, like that commented on this. I commented on this as well, but I'm pretty sure it did not get approved. Yeah. They don't hold the words of critique of any worth. You could do that in any RPG. This is true. I'll get into this later about the overleveling stuff. Great review. Okay, here we go. This is great because Phil actually responded to this one. Phil has no clue how gains are made. If he did, he'd know why assets are reused. It's to save on time. It's to try and lessen the workloads of devs who are already overworked and often underpaid, and it's also done to help reduce the size of a game as much as possible. All games do it. If he wants a game that uses 100% original assets throughout the entire game, he should make one. I do not agree with this with the last statement of this at all, because that's like if you don't like it, make it yourself. That's a logical fallacy. Everything else though is 100% true. Game developers reuse assets all the time for the sake of cutting costs and for the sake of decreasing the workload on developers who are already stressed out. It's just a thing that happens. Making a new asset costs a whole lot of money. It costs more money to remake an asset than it does to recolor an existing asset and then put it in a new place. It's why like Pokemon just brings back the same models every year. It's why like old enemies appear in the same games year after year after year. It's why Shin Megami Tensei uses the same 3D models in every game since Persona 5. I have no doubt that Soul Hackers 2 is going to be using the same assets as Shin Megami Tensei 5 did, as Persona 5 did. Maybe change some of the animations a bit or the particle effects, but they will be the same assets because those assets can be reused and recycled as much as possible to give the game like some sort of variety to it, without putting too much work on the developers who are already overworked. Shin Megami Tensei 5 was already a massive undertaking, but that's neither here nor there. And then Phil's response, the industry could just get better. Nobody wants people to be overworked and underpaid, but that doesn't mean we should just accept subpar experiences in the games we pay our good money for. Philip, you did not pay for this game, your fans did. Shut the fuck up. Thank you for an honest and truthful review. Elden Ring for me is some ways a spirit successor to Dark Souls 2. Overly ambitious in their developing output. Lots of good pros were added compared to the previous tales, but at the same time, they managed to bloat the game with repeated assets and being unbalanced beyond belief for those who experience with FromSoft games post the Demon Souls. A game that's liked by everyone but loved by no one. In my opinion, Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne are the only true masterpieces FromSoft have ever made. Actually worth adding to a more flawed game. Demon Souls is a prototype of DNA, the reason we got these valuable gems. Sekiro is the most satisfying FromSoft game with a different feel or thing. I would argue that Metal Wolf Chaos is the best FromSoft game that we have ever gotten, but we are never going to get a sequel to that. That was a one and done deal, and it is perfect as is. Your point respond on your whole review felt more objective compared to people with larger status than yours. Something I'm still mad about because you deserve a climb with a ladder to reach higher status. No, he does not. Don't let your soul be sold, and don't let your detractors dictate how you feel and how you act. They lack beliefs and standards to be considered as positive influence, but you probably already know that. And then my response is, the detractor community believes that a streamer should not have to encourage their audience into giving them money, and that the standards are that a performer should actually invest in their craft. Yes, I still stand by that. That's probably why my comments did not get approved by him, because that's talking shit about Phil. 10 does not mean perfect. Angry Joe barely gave games a 10, but gave Elden Ring a 10 because everything a Souls game has and more. Agree with your review, blah, blah, blah. Decent amount of bloat in the open world. Okay, I'll get into the open world argument at some point, because Phil does get into it, and I have some things to say about it. And while he's not completely wrong about open worlds, he does get some things wrong about why they exist and what they can, and what they do and how they do things, and why things can go wrong or impact the player based on how the game is played with an open world game. And it is totally a player experience thing. The reviewers are bullied into giving Elden Ring a perfect score, just like they got bullied into giving GTA 5 and Skyrim perfect reviews. And then my response is citation needed. I forgot I actually did comment a few times on this video just to be an ass. But anyway, let's go into it. Let's see what old Philly boy has to say about Elden Ring. I will try not to stop too often during this review, but we'll see we'll see how it goes. Because sometimes he might just say shit that I have to go off on a tangent for. Just because he is very wrong about a lot of things.
Hello everyone out there, and welcome to my spoken word review of Elden Ring. I am Darkside Phil. I am someone who has history with From Software games. I have not necessarily loved them forever, but over the years of being demanded to play them by my viewers, and actually going back and kind of re-experiencing them, I actually have grown to love the franchises that FromSoft comes out with. I've replayed most of the Dark Souls games multiple times, multiple runs, and I've gotten better at them over time. It was not an easy process for me. Okay.
Anybody who has watched the This Is How You Don't Play of his FromSoft games can tell you that he is absolutely terrible at most of the games and got through them all either by over leveling or by summoning help. That is an irrefutable fact. He summoned help for a lot of the games, a lot of the bosses, and he over leveled a lot of them. The most notorious one is, I think, when he over leveled himself to level 87 after the end of his first play session of Demon Souls. Nobody really knew how the hell he did that, because you would have had to sit there for like several hours killing low level mobs and then just power leveling himself to exert degrees without actually making any progress in the game. So by the time he actually did the rest of the game, he was already past the the recommended level for most of it. He's done this with all FromSoft games. Look at any sort of playthrough that he has. He's usually around like 50 levels higher than the recommended area at any given time. And I think Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, he would summon help. I do remember clearly I don't know if you want to call it a rage quit, but definitely is like a stupid moment, is that during both those playthroughs of the old monk fight in Demon Souls, the original Demon Souls and the remake on the PS5, he cheesed it because the old monk is either another player or it is an AI that is meant to simulate another player. It is a PvP fight taking the form of a boss fight in Demon Souls. I think in the first run he lost so many times that he ended up just pulling the cord, so that he didn't have to fight a real player. And then in the second run of Demon Souls on the PS5, he got bodied by a Japanese streamer, who specifically went into the fight just to fight other players, and ended up on Phil's stream, and he streamed Phil's fight against him. It's a really, really fun dichotomy to watch, because the Japanese player is just laughing his ass off at running circles around Phil while Phil's just complaining the entire time. And then the time he actually beat the old monk fight in his playthrough of Demon's Souls, the other player had connection issues, and instead of resetting the encounter and leaving or dying on purpose so he could have a fair fight against another player, he just beat the PvE AI instead and called that a victory, as opposed to winning fair and square against another player. But that's just the way he plays things. Like he has a history of cheating these games, and it's no surprise that he does. He likes to pretend that he plays these games fair and square, but he does not. He always tries to find a way to cheese the games, either by looking up guys over leveling or using some sort of busted mechanic in order to get his way through these games.
So when Elden Ring was announced that it was going to be a big open world game, but it was going to be the FromSoft formula, I was intrigued and very interested. I was wondering how being able to ride a horse and do jumping and platforming would change the way that the game is played.
No, it wasn't.
You hadn't really been able to do in previous FromSoft games, where simply just doing a running jump was a chore.
It was a chore if you didn't know how to use the controls.
The gameplay would be, because in some FromSoft games previously,
you weren't wondering this either.
You could go through with a particular build and coast through a game. Other games, you had to kind of do variety of gameplay over the course of a game. And some games didn't even offer you variety, like Sekiro. So, with all these factors, okay, being in play, I was very, very, very interested.
No, you weren't.
To see how Elden Ring would turn out. And when I started playing the game, I realized that this was going to be a little bit different than someone just playing the game for themselves. I'm a content creator. I'm a live streamer. I have an audience of hundreds of people who tune in every day.
Debatable. Technically, yes, because there are people on the restreams that watch it, but I don't know how big his actual live audience is. There's been a rumor floating around that he uses view bots. I am not going to say for certain whether he does or not, but it does seem kind of odd that he has an audience that he has a concurrent live viewer count in the hundreds, and yet there's only an active chat of maybe like 10. There's not 10, more like a couple dozen. Basically, there's way more live viewers to his streams than there are people that are actively talking in those streams. But putting aside the fact that he has a very, very strict policy on what to say in his streams at all, or the fact that he has a subscriber only mode on, like a 1 day subscriber only mode on for every single one of his streams. Barring the fact that like it seems odd that there's um like 10 times the lurkers in his stream, or like 5 times the lurkers in his stream than there are actual live chatters. It's just odd. If the detractor streams, the restreamers that watch him have usually a much more active chat. Usually just, either talking amongst themselves or actually, speaking frankly on what Phil is saying or what he is doing. Because they are actually allowed to do so without fear of being banned.
To watch what I do. And so when I played Elden Ring, instead of just playing it for myself to beat it, I realized, man, this game is something special. This is something that when I play it, I want to put an absolute honest effort into seeing all the content of the game in one playthrough. Most people have not done that.
Yes, they have. Or at least they did multiple playthroughs in order to see all the content that way, too. You don't need to see all the content of Elden Ring or Dark Souls or any sort of FromSoft game on your first run. That is not really their intent. Their intent is for replayability. Elden Ring kind of like exemplifies that idea, that these games are made to be replayed with different builds, different weapons, with different items, with different quests. You can do many different things in your first run of the game, but if you want to go and do something different on your second, third, fourth run, you can do that. I know a few people who actually are on their the multiplicative runs for Elden Ring already. One person that I know is actually doing a randomizer run for Elden Ring where every single boss is randomized. And that's really interesting. They've already beat the game once, but they want to try to do something different when broadcasting the game by using a randomizer, which is really cool. I like seeing the bosses that they run out against like that, as opposed to, when you go to the tree, when you go fight the tree sentinel at the beginning of the game, it could be Melania for all you fucking know. It's great. But his point here is that, yeah, not a lot of people have done a 100% full run, 100% complete full run of the game on their first run. That is untrue. A lot of people do that. I would probably do that as well, to some degree. I would at least want to see all the major quests and most of the major content. That's just the way I like to play things. I'm a one and done player. Just because of how I like games to be. I do not enjoy replaying games because I already know most of the story beats. There's some games that I've gotten better at replaying, but most of them I do not. Phil's idea of not replaying the game involves basically he does not want to have to replay the game because he just doesn't want to play the game again. Like, he doesn't like playing games at all, really. It's kind of obvious that over the course of most games, he just doesn't like playing, but the fact that this is his chosen career. So he just wants to get a game over and done with as soon as possible. There we go. So he just wants to get a game over and done with as soon as possible, as opposed to actually trying to absorb it. It becomes obvious about this towards the end of his Elden Ring playthrough, where he starts criticizing bosses for quote unquote wasting his time, even though this is his job. Like, it's not wasted time if he's still playing the game for a live audience. He might consider it wasted time because he wants to, he has a strict schedule to adhere to and he wants to clock out early or whatever. But you could always just extend the stream. If a boss is like running too late or whatever, but no, he has to actually he adheres to like a very, very strict schedule in terms of how he does things, how long he does his sort of pre-stream ranting, how long he takes his breaks for, and how long he streams for. So he can't go over that for any reason whatsoever. He just doesn't allow himself to do that. That's why he always says a game is like wasting his time. I can get into that later as well, because I find it funny that this is also the same man who rage quit a Kirby game. Let's put it that way.
Most people went out and said, I'm just going to try to beat it at first, and maybe I'll replay it again and look for the secret areas. Maybe I'll do a particular build run, then replay it again with a different build run. For me, I wanted to see as much as I possibly could, because I knew that if I put that much time and effort into the playthrough, not only would it be special, but people would not be wanting. They would not say, oh, you left out critical parts of the game. I also knew that I was not intending to go back to the game for a second run anytime soon. I actually literally just beat the game on a stream, and I told my viewing audience, hey, I will go back to it with a New Game Plus run, but we're giving it a good break.
We'll see a redemption run in about 2 years' time. That's usually what happens with these games. He does a redemption run a few years later to like pretty much prove that he's actually still a good player and disprove like all the cheese strats that he did before. It doesn't work because he just uses a different cheese strat the second time around. He finds out something else that works, be it using summons or overleveling or whatever. He'll do something different, and he's done this for every single Soulsborne game that FromSoft does put out.
Okay, so I just completed a 122-hour-long playthrough of Elden Ring. And I want to talk about it and review it for you so that you can know what someone like me, who has history with FromSoft, but also has a different kind of perspective on games like this, thought about the overall experience.
His perspective on games about this is that he's bad at them.
Alrighty then.
And he doesn't try to learn them at all.
Where do you start? Well, the beginning. At first, when you started with Elden Ring and you go into this open world, your eyes kind of go wide. You're like, whoa. Dark Souls never looked like this before, right? Dark Souls is always kind of linear when it comes to the way that the dungeons go. Although, admittedly, with Dark Souls, especially the first one and second one, there's a lot of open world aspect where you can do things in different order. Never before have you seen a vast open world like this.
Point of order.
Hold the Sheikah slate up to the pedestal.
Where is it?
That will show you.
Never seen anything like it before, huh? Haven't we? That's called an establishing shot, and most games have them, including FromSoft games. The establishing shot in the first Dark Souls is Firelink Shrine. Straight up, it is Firelink Shrine, where you are given all these different paths laid out before you, and you had to choose whether or not you want to go up or down as your first major decision in the game. The fact that Elden Ring starts you off with an established shot of the open world is not different from many other open world games. Pretty much every single open world game does this. And yeah, to the point, yeah, Dark Souls games never did that before. To some degree, yes and no, but the first things that you usually see is the is your hub. Your hub itself, which sets the tone for each of the games. In terms of like, most of them are going to be lonely worlds, lonely, desolate worlds, but still have a feeling of familiarity, a feeling of home. That is especially true in Dark Souls 2. As much shit as Dark Souls 2 gets, I do think Majula is probably the best hub world in a FromSoft game. Just because it's very open and it feels very comforting to go back to Majula whenever you complete a different adventure in any of the other areas of the game.
And immediately being thrown into this world, learning how to run and jump and do scaling and stuff that you really weren't able to do in previous games from FromSoft was pretty interesting. Once you get the horse, it's a whole new aspect, right? A whole new aspect of riding around fast, and the horse gameplay absolutely is a great new addition because now you have variety in how you play the game. Are you going to tackle this?
You had variety in how you played the game before. You just said it. The horses adds a lot of good momentum to the game. It makes things faster, and it is kind of necessary in a world as big as Elden Ring. The lands between is huge. Having the horse gets you around easier, and it also helps you deal with certain enemies a bit better than you would normally be able to as just a person on foot.
Boss on foot, like a traditional Dark Souls boss fight, or are you actually going to ride the horse and try to use those new implements? The cool thing about the horse is, in some cases, it's an asset. You can move faster, you can move with a giant boss and stay near their legs, but in some cases it's a detriment because the horse does not have a dodge roll with iframes, meaning if you're in a boss fight and a boss does a big attack, unless you can jump over it or get out of the way, you're taking that hit, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in a lot of cases, and it's very interesting to learn when do you want to use the horse and when don't you. Now, there are actually certain...
It seems pretty self-explanatory when the horse is good for your fight or not.
The game is saying you're now in a tougher area. There's going to be a particular boss fight story element, or maybe you're entering one of the legacy dungeons where they don't want you to have that kind of maneuverability, and that makes sense in my opinion, but the horse is used really well in the game. And one thing that I can absolutely tell you is one of the major improvements that Elden Ring did over previous FromSoft games, the platforming is dramatically improved. Actually trying to jump and land on a pinpoint spot is way easier in this game. The horse actually platforms really well, although every once in a while you may have a little bit of extra momentum and
I
accidentally
will
go for
say
a
that he's right
spot,
about this
leading to
point
cheap
in
death.
general, because they did
Once
seem
you
to have
learn
improved the movement a
how
lot.
exactly these
You
controls
can
work, the
jump
game
around a
is
lot
actually
easier,
smooth. I
and
have to
movement
say,
is a bit
like,
better.
I really
They did
enjoyed
improve the movement
platforming
engine,
aspect
at
of
least
Elden
traversal
Ring,
anyway.
and it was a humongous
Somehow,
improvement
but
over
it's not that
any
big of
other
a deal.
Dark
Using
Souls
torrent or
or any
going
other
on
game
foot,
that
it's
I've
not that
played
big
from
of a deal.
FromSoft. It really helped out a lot. Exploring this giant open world, trying to find all these hidden items and secrets didn't feel like every single moment you took a jump, you were chancing losing all of your runes because you might slip and not land where you wanted to land.
Funny thing, he actually did slip and land where he didn't want to land a lot of times, and usually jumped off cliffs to his death. So I don't know what the fuck he's talking about here, because he would die quite frequently just to fall damage. Like just jumping off of things and landing in a really, really bad way, like jumping off of cliffs or whatever. So I don't know what he's talking about here. But yeah, he does have a point in that it's easier to move around, it's easier to jump around, and it's easier to traverse either on foot or with torrent. It's not that big of a deal, though. They improved movement tech. The best movement tech was already in place with Bloodborne. They knew how to do this already. It's not that big of a deal. It's just that now they incorporated platforming in a better degree. And even then, you don't need to platform that much.
More times than not, I actually landed accurately, which was very surprising. Now, this game basically has 3 different kinds of gameplay when it comes to dungeons. You've got the open world exploration, where you're going through various different maps and taking on different enemies in the open world, whether they be little normal enemies, kind of mid-boss enemies that are larger and have more of a health pool of HP, and sometimes random encounters of open world bosses. There's also what I would compare to the Chalice dungeons of Bloodborne. These are dungeons that are put into the game to be completely optional. You don't need to do them, and they don't necessarily have anything to do with the story of the game. But they are optional challenge dungeons of different varieties. Some look like a catacomb, some look like a cave, and a lot of the times you're reusing a lot of assets. The same type of enemies, the same type of walls, the same types of traps and tricks. At the end of each one of these dungeons, there's a door you have to open. There's a hidden switch inside. You have to find the hidden switch somewhere in the dungeon, flip it, open the door, get to the boss, kill the boss, get a reward of runes, and usually you get some kind of an item. It could be anything. It could be a weapon. It could be a amulet that you equip that gives you a stat boost. It could give you a crafting item. It could give you all kinds of stuff for beating these bosses. Now, the good thing is that especially early game when you're trying to get your bearings and learn how to play the game, these optional dungeons are very fun. But it definitely needs to be said, these optional dungeons are incredibly repetitive, grindy, and boring, especially once you get to around the second half of the game.
Okay. Point of order. The random dungeons in most of these things, at least from my perspective, seem a lot like the shrines in Breath of the Wild, or like the cauldrons in Horizon, or whatever, what have you. Basically, smaller areas that are optional. And I'm saying this as somebody that did not play Elden Ring, by the way. My experience with FromSoft games is that I have played and beaten Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, and not FromSoft in general, but I have played and beaten Code Vein, which is a similar game as FromSoft styles. It seems like these things are just like really small optional things. You don't need to do all of them. You just need to you can do as many as you want them as you want. They're not meant to be done like to completion, to full on do everything in the game. You do not need to do them. And I know what he's about to say here because I've seen this review already before. He did do all of them, and he's complaining that they got repetitive after a while of doing all of them. Well, of course they're going to get repetitive from doing all of them because you did all of them. You're not supposed to. They're just supposed to be things that you can do if you want to. If you feel like you need to, if you feel like, you're on your way to something and you see a dungeon on the way, oh, go in and get there. Go in and do that thing. It's the same thing as anything pretty much in any Elder Scrolls game post Morrowind. Oblivion and Skyrim, particularly Oblivion, actually has those dungeons that just dot the landscape where you just walk into them and it's like kind of like a really small catacomb or whatever. There's some enemies there. There might be something else of importance there. You go there, grab it, and you leave. You don't need to do all of them. They're just a point of interest. The fact that he felt compelled to do all of them says more about the fact that he just didn't want to play this game again than anything else. So that's pretty much at that point. Give me 1 second. I had to check on something.
So it's kind of like it's nice they're there. If you want to do them, great. But even me, after doing such a lengthy playthrough, found myself wanting to skip those dungeons by the end of the game because they didn't feel like they were adding anything to my playthrough except every once in a while randomly running into a really good item. And I do have to say that is a little bit kind of a disappointment, and here's why. When you have so many of these optional dungeons, you have no idea when you encounter one if it's worth your time or not. If you don't particularly feel underpowered or underleveled, and you don't need those extra runes of doing the dungeon, what about the end item? Is it worth it or not? In some of these dungeons, I got items that were never for a build that I wanted to use, and then other times I got a rare weapon that was incredibly good, and I ended up using it for the rest of the game.
He used guys to figure out which of these little smaller dungeons had things that he needed, by the way. Aside from that, though, that's kind of the point. You go into these things not really expecting what you're going to get, but you just want to, do the reward. Again, you don't need to do all of them. And getting a good reward in one might encourage you to do more of that same style. I do remember in Breath of the Wild, very many of the shrines, aside from the orb in the shrine, which would give you either health or stamina, depending on what you decide to do with the stat points, they would have multiple chests in them. And in these chests, there could be either a piece of, usually it's like a piece of armor that you could upgrade, and the armor was way more useful than anything else you get, or you get a weapon, or money, or resources. The weapons were not that useful unless you actually needed the weapon, or the resources were also just kind of dead useless at some point in the game, because at some point in Breath of the Wild, you just farm resources and you just sell them. So they're not that useful. But the point really of this doing the shrines and doing these mini dungeons, as he calls them, these small caverns, is really just, they should be the reward in and of themselves. You just go in there because you want to see what's in there and you want to fight them. If it's a lackluster reward, then fine. You just move on to the next one or move on to do something else. It's not that big of a deal. The way that he plays, though, is he expects to get a good reward proportional to what he gets done in every single one of these things, no matter what he did. So he expects to always find something useful in these smaller dungeons, which of course is never the case, but it's also not something really worth complaining about. It's just a thing that happens as you play an open world game. Sometimes you get a good reward and sometimes you get a trash reward. But even if you get the trash reward, you can still sell the trash reward for a good amount of money or whatever you need it for. In his case, he'd probably sell them for more runes so he could level up more.
So it's kind of a trade-off. It's like, do I do it? Well, if I do it, great, but that's a lot of time invested. So it's kind of interesting that they're in there and there is a ton of them, but you basically have to judge for yourself whether or not there's something you want to do. You absolutely do not have to do them to complete the game. Then there's the legacy dungeons. And the legacy dungeons are, in my opinion, the best part of Elden Ring. Because
this is a sentiment that he's echoing from a bunch of other reviewers, by the way. It is not original to him. Pretty much everybody loves the legacy dungeons. It's not that of a unique viewpoint because of how good they're designed.
A manor set in a lava field of a volcano, a floating city out in the distance. Whatever it is, it's going to be a typical Dark Souls dungeon where there's going to be a lot of exploration, a lot of enemies that are very cheap and can kill you with only a couple of hits, lurking around every corner. If you fully explore, you're going to find a lot of fun optional stuff, and a lot of the times there'll be optional bosses and optional ways to get around these stages. It's not necessarily a linear path to the end.
So basically like Sense Fortress.
You will end up having a big boss fight. In some cases, some of these legacy dungeons actually have multiple big boss fights, okay? So that being said, it's great, and I absolutely loved every single legacy dungeon that I went up against in Elden Ring. I don't even have a complaint about a single one of them, okay?
He did complain about the run back to the double-headed dragon at some point, though.
I was counting in my head last night, trying to recap everything I did in the game, and I can tell you, there's at least 15. So that's an absolute ton of legacy-style content. If you like Dark Souls or Demon Souls, you're absolutely going to love those legacy dungeons in Elden Ring. Now, over the course of the game, you're going to be doing such a mix of stuff. Open world exploration. Oh, an optional dungeon. Is this a legacy dungeon? All right.
Why is he just repeating all this stuff? We already know.
Points of grace are equivalent to bonfires in Dark Souls. They're your resting spots, and they're where you do all kinds of things like leveling up, assigning all your inventory and your equipment load. But in some cases, they will point you in a direction in the world, and when you're playing, admittedly, the first thing you think is, oh, they're telling me where to go. Wrong. Points of grace can literally point to anything in the game that's a point of interest. It might point you to one of the legacy dungeons. It could point you to a cave. It could point you to absolutely nothing. They really don't seem to have any bearing because they point all over the place. So following those initial points of grace, you immediately get confused, wondering where you're supposed to go in the game.
Again, I have not played Elden Ring. I'm assuming the points of grace are usually in places where you can see a good bit of the landscape and figure out where to go from that point onward. So they function sort of like they function as both bonfire and watchtower in other open world games. In the Ubi model of an open world game, there are the watchtowers. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild had these as well, where at the top of the watchtower you could see a good part of the landscape and figure out where you want to go just from looking around. So you could, if you saw something that looked interesting to you, you would go in that direction. And you could also dot your map with waypoints from the top of the tower to see where you wanted to go. In Ubisoft games, they did that for you. Breath of the Wild, you had to do it yourself, which is still it's still a better system than what Ubisoft games does. But with here, he's basically complained that a new player who's looking for a point of interest to explore will follow something that indicates a point of interest to explore and might find nothing or get confused or whatever. It's like, that's kind of the point of an open world game. Is that it's fun to get lost in the world. You want to get lost because if you get lost in the world, you could find something unexpected, something that's useful, or something that was at least interesting and you have a story to tell, something that is unique to your experience in that world. I don't really like most of open world games because of how they're constructed, but that is one of the major appeals of them and why I think Breath of the Wild succeeded in that regard. You were never given a true sense of direction in that. You had to find it for yourself. And so everybody would have unique experiences about what they managed to find and what they managed to do from any sort of given waypoint in the game, which is what the points of grace in this one are supposed to be for as well. They give you a direction, tell you to go in that direction, but you can also just stray out the beam path and ignore it entirely if you really want to and have your own experience. Obviously, he knew where to go and what to do because he had a guide.
And that seems to be the running thought of the game, is never to really be clear on what your objective is, where you're supposed to go, or what you're supposed to do. Now, maybe that's part of the charm of the game, because having a game this open world might feel like it's completely unique from the other previous Dark Souls games. It's very rare when you're going to run into a situation where you're going to be like,
oh, by the way, the entire time he's watching his chat like a hawk to see if he needs to ban anybody.
I'm stuck, right? I can't make any progress. In Dark Souls games, that could happen a lot. There's a boss you absolutely have to beat to make progress in the game, and if you can't beat the boss, you're never going to beat it. In the case of Elden Ring, it's very different. If you're going somewhere and you can't beat a certain boss or beat a certain dungeon, leave. Go do something else. There's another 100 other things to do in the game. That's one of the huge reasons why people have said that Elden Ring is the most accessible From Software game ever made.
He's going to point out that there's a wrong thing to say.
I have to agree with that point, that if you're able to go off and do whatever you want at any point in the game, and you can never really get stuck, because at any moment you could go do an optional dungeon, fight things in the open world, grind for runes to level up, or whatever it may be, you're never really going to get stuck in the game. But abso-pos-freaking-lutely, you can say, whoa, this game is confusing. I have no idea if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do to make progress. That happens all the time. If you're not using a walkthrough, a guide, or watching someone else who's already played tell you what to do, you will end up getting lost and walking in circles, having no clear-cut path of where to go or what to do. There's even optional ways to do things in the game that you're not aware of.
Okay, point of order. Aside from the fact that he very clearly used guides in order to get through this game, and kind of admits that he did so at this point, he also had his chat telling him exactly where to go and what to do at every single crossroads in this game. I'm not joking. Like, he would refer to his chat, and they like every couple of seconds, they tell him what to do, where to go, and any sort of lore tidbits that he had missed out on because he's obviously not paying attention to what's going on in the game. Most people who went into this game that I know of don't really have this sort of complaint because they actually paid attention to what NPCs are saying. They don't just have it go in one ear and right out the other like he does. He had his chat inform him of everything like 10 seconds later because he really doesn't give a shit about what the game is telling him to do. So this is one of this is a him problem, not necessarily a problem with the way the game is designed, because the game gives you plenty of direction on what to do and where to go, especially if you're following certain quest lines. I know there was a bit of like issue with that when the game first launched, but then they actually showed where NPCs ended up for different parts of the quest line. I do remember there were some issues about you don't know where NPCs went once you were finished with them in one area, and then the update would tell you that they're in this new place. I think for some NPCs it was like a bit complicated like that, because I know at one point Ronnie would move and you didn't know where she would move to, and they ended up pointing out where exactly she's at later on. And a lot of other NPCs had that problem as well, where you didn't know where they were going, but you could but now you can track them down pretty easily with that new update, so that you can just go to different sort of I guess would be safe areas, talk to them, and continue their specific quest lines. Even he would have trouble with this too. He just didn't pay attention to where they would go, and he didn't pay attention to how to actually get them to appear if like they only showed up at night or something. But again, that's a him problem.
You might be in a dungeon you've been in for 5 hours just to realize, oh, it was actually an optional dungeon. Oh shit, I thought that was story. Nope, optional dungeon. You didn't even have to do it. Now,
so that sounds fun though. At least you had fun. You did something fun.
There's a lot of different ways to play it. Whether it's a melee build, a magic build, a ranged build with, say, arrows and throwing daggers,
a jump R2 build, a jump R2 build, or a jump R2 build. How about a jump R2 build?
Two-hand, you can dual wield weapons if you have the right.
Oh, dual wield and jump R2. That sounds really interesting.
Along with things that are very similar to the previous Dark Souls games, like faith, intelligence. Those are things from previous.
Oh, a strength, faith, jump R2 build, or an int jump R2 build.
From software games like Dark Souls, you're gonna feel right at home playing Elden Ring. And that may actually lead to one of my points about the game, is that this game is actually Dark Souls 4.
Okay. Okay. This is bullshit. This is actually, this statement here is why I decided to do this video to begin with, because this is such a reductive ass thing for him to say that he doesn't understand how game development works at all. There are so many different things about Elden Ring and such a divergence from Dark Souls in general that it makes it a completely unique experience. Thematically, it is different. Gameplay, mechanically, it is different. Like, it is just so different from anything that FromSoft has done before to that same degree that it is considered its own different franchise. The only real thing that it has in common with Dark Souls is that it has in a setting of what I would call generic medieval fantasy land, and even then some of my friends would chastise me for saying something like that, because Dark Souls has its own sort of cosmology to it, as does Elden Ring. Elden Ring is very much based on Norse mythology, whereas Dark Souls very much is based on Germanic mythology to some degree. There is some overlap, but Norse mythology and like Nordic like storytelling, that is what Elden Ring is based off of, just loosely. And obviously I've got the car with Bloodborne. But if he's going to be this goddamn reductive about it, why the hell does he just call this game Demon Souls 7? Like, straight up. He could just call this game Demon Souls 7. Because if that's the case, then Dark Souls 1 is Demon Souls 2. Then you have Dark Souls 1, which is Demon Souls 2. Demon Souls 3 is Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls... Yeah, Demon Souls... I'm just thinking about this in my head. Demon Souls 1 is Demon Souls. Demon Souls 2 is Dark Souls 1. 1, 2, and 3 Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 Dark Souls is Demon Souls 1, 2, and 4, I believe. Or the Elden Ring might be Demon Souls 6. I'm not exactly sure. Sekiro might be Sekiro is Tenchu 8 or whatever it is. It's another Tenchu game. And then Bloodborne is Demon Souls 4. Like, yeah, Demon Souls 4. Dark Souls 3 is Demon Souls 5. And Elden Ring is Demon Souls 6 or Demon Souls 7, whatever you want to call it. It's another Demon Souls game, as opposed to another Dark Souls game, because what is Dark Souls except just another Demon Souls game as well? It's just a very reductive point that I really, really didn't like, and why I wanted to do this video to begin with. Because being this reductive for this particular argument is just inherently, like, intellectually disingenuous. It's really, really bad that he's this reductive about it, because of the whole idea of this just being yet another Dark Souls, because it's somewhat mechanically similar and uses very similar gameplay aspects, does not mean it's the exact same goddamn game. It's its own world. With its own lore and its own differences with its mechanics. It is not the same thing as Dark Souls. Even the 3 Dark Souls games are very different from each other thematically and mechanically. Like Dark Souls 1 does not play like Dark Souls 3. I'm not counting Dark Souls 2 because Dark Souls 2 is not that good. But they're very different mechanically in terms of like how they incorporate different things. The worlds are very different. They only have some certain things in common regarding like the object of the Dark Soul, was only really pertinent in the first game. But either way, those worlds are sort of interconnected through way of Dark Souls 3. But either way, they're not like Elden Ring is not connected to the Dark Souls cosmology at all. It is its own thing and has its own systems. It's not the same. Like saying like, what was it, like fucking Breath of the Wild is the same thing as Link to the Past. Just because they're both the Legend of Zelda, like they're not. They're very thematically different. And they're also very mechanically different too. Elden Ring is not the same thing as Dark Souls 4. And if anything, it'd be Demon Souls 6, as I said.
Now, I know some people are going to be up in arms. Oh my God, no, this is Elden Ring. This is a new franchise. This game, absolutely, positively, in every way, shape, and form, is Dark Souls 4. Okay? There's no way you can argue it. It's absolutely Dark Souls 4. There's no difference. It's bonfires. No. Oh, those are points of grace. Oh, you can dual wield. You can level it up with stats, just like Dark Souls.
Just like Bloodborne with the lanterns, just like Bloodborne with blood echoes, just like Dark Souls and Demon Souls with their soul systems. It's the same fucking thing in every single game. Just like Code Vein or whatever with the with like their blood or whatever, or their ether or whatever the fuck it's called. Just like pretty much every single from FromSoft style game, they all had the same thing where they all have save points throughout the world where if you save, it refreshes the enemies. You can use whatever currency you have there to level up, or you could lose the currency when you die. It's the same thing as benches in Hollow Knight, really. Like there's so many different things you can compare it to. This argument is so reductive, and it just shows that he doesn't really know much about how these games are designed, or that they have just because they have some mechanics doesn't mean that they're the exact same thing and that they're the exact same franchise.
Those are runes you got. No, they're not. They're souls. It's exactly the same game engine. In fact, in the entirety of the game, there's only 2 critical differences I noticed in combat that make this different from previous Dark Souls games. The first is the inclusion of a stagger system that was actually taken, of all things, from Sekiro. There is an unseen meter somewhere on every enemy. Once you hit an enemy a certain amount of times, they stagger, meaning they hunch over and they're weak. This even applies.
This stagger system also existed in Bloodborne. If you shot something enough times or riposted enough times, you could stagger an enemy and then riposte. It was something that it existed before.
Now I can either heal, get my stats back, or maybe you want to do a combo instead of the big powerful kind of punishing move. You could do all those things. Now this was present in Sekiro, never really present previously in Dark Souls games, so this is definitely an addition. In addition,
I like how he just forgets that Bloodborne exists.
Change, because you can jump now. Jump attacks are ridiculously overpowered in this game. At first, I thought it was kind of a joke as I started playing the game, and people were actually telling me in comments on my stream, in the comments of the videos, hey, you should really utilize that jump attack. That jump attack's really good. I thought, oh, maybe those people are just being silly. The jump attack is by far the most overpowered component I've ever seen in a From Software game. When you do a jump attack in this game, you dramatically increase the stun that you deal with that attack. Later on in the game, as you start to two-hand powerful weapons or even dual wield, you're basically doing 2 attacks in one with double stun. This attack can be abused, exploited, and completely dominates entire lengths of the game, including entire boss fights become actually afterthoughts because the jump attack dominates them so badly. I don't know what they were thinking with the jump attacks in this game, because I've seen, there's abusable things. You can abuse a blood build where you slash a guy, an enemy enough that he bleeds out. You can abuse a stun locking spell. Okay, great. But man, the jump attack is something you don't even have to try. You just start doing it, you're like, oh my God, this is so good.
This is why he lost to Melania like 83 times. He lost to Melania like 84 times before he ended up beating her by using a special weapon art with one of the other weapons. I think it was the Banished Blade is what he used to finally defeat her. Which is a very known cheese strat for fighting Melania. If you're having trouble, just use the Banished Blade because its weapon art will stun her. It will interrupt her attacks. It will stun her. It will make her unable to do anything. And you still had trouble, even when you see the Banished Blade. Again, at 50 levels over the recommended level for the encounter, he like had trouble with her, even when using a cheese strat. If you watch his playthrough for any length of time, which I suggest you don't, he did use jump attack a lot. He used jump attack for pretty much every single encounter in the game. And as far as his reasoning for why jump attacking is so good, there are a few that he's overlooking. Number one, it closes distance. Usually enemies do not have an aggro distance that is longer than your jump attack distance. You can jump attack from a fair far point away and still do a whole lot of damage before an enemy is even aware of your presence. This is not really a problem, but you can sneak up to enemies in most Souls games and backstab them. What he did is he pretty much jumped attacked anything from a safe distance. So he would jump attack pretty much every single mob that he could from a distance that they were not aware of him. And this would also deal basically like sneak damage to them as well. But yeah, the jump attack stuff and the stun damage stuff and the poise damage that he would do, that is apparently inaccurate because the poise damage is based off of true damage that you do based on your weapons. So he was basically stunning enemies because he was so over leveled and overpowered with two very overpowered weapons, not because he was jump attacking, because the poise damage is probably like scaling with your true damage. And that's why he was so successful with it, because he was running around 60 levels over everything in an area, as well as using a weapon that was at +10 that really shouldn't have been, because he knew exactly where to get the items to improve that single weapon to +10. So he was running around with basically like end game equipment in mid game areas. And he complains that this isn't easy stuff to do. It's like, no, it's not. The jump attack, as far as I know, as far as it looks in this game, is that it's meant to be sort of an opener. And then after you hit something with the jump attack, you finish them all with regular blows, or if they're not going to be like, if they're not going to go down a few more blows after that, a standard fight. You just fight them normally. But the jump attack is meant to get like an easy first strike on them. It is not meant to be your primary method of attack. The only reason it was for him is because he was using heavy weapons. He was using heavy weapons, 2 of them, that were maxed out and that he was over level for an area. So he could jump attack one shot pretty much everything. It's basically like going through the entire game of Dark Souls 1 with the Zweihander at Undead Parish and Undead Burg. The Zweihander at Undead Parish and Undead Burg one-shots anything with its strong attack. It just does. Later on, it's not as powerful. You have to level it up some, and even then, it won't be as powerful as it was in those original areas, because those original areas, it would one-shot everything. He played the entire game with that kind of mentality of being able to one-shot everything he came across, except for some bosses, and even then, he would one-shot a lot of bosses very, very easily because of jump attack spamming. Oh yeah, and he also face tanked everything. He had like 54 or something vitality, way higher than the soft cap, and he would still take so many hits that he needed to chug potions through everything, but he would face tank through everything nonetheless. He just had so much health that it didn't matter.
At the beginning of the game, there was an optional boss that I was fighting that killed me, like, I'm not even exaggerating, 50 times because I was so stubborn.
The Tree Sentinel.
Boss, even though I wasn't really leveled and ready for it yet.
The Tree Sentinel. He decided to fight the Tree Sentinel at level 1.
All you had to do was jump attack. And I really? Yeah. If I had jumped attacked, he stuns. It's just that simple. The jump attack is ridiculously broken in this game.
He's either talking about Market or the Tree Sentinel. I can't tell which one. But if he's talking about Market, he actually summoned the jellyfish to beat him.
If you look at everything in this game, when you kill one of the major bosses, you get a rune you can equip to your body. And then use an item to charge the rune. Oh, you mean like Embering in Dark Souls? Oh, the souls are now called runes, and you level up exactly the same.
Embering is not the same thing as equipping a rune. It 100% is not the same thing as equipping a rune. If you Ember, you just get a health buff. That's all you do. If you Ember or you human, you get a health buff. That's about it. Rune equipping is almost the same thing as actually, yeah, it is blood runes from Bloodborne, where you equip the runes onto your weapons. And those runes would give your weapons bonus stats. That's what that was. It was equipping blood runes at the workshop. It was not the same thing as embering. Again, he completely overlooks the fact that a lot of these mechanics were also in Bloodborne to some extent. He completely forgets that Bloodborne exists.
Way the stat requirements are exactly the same. The attacks, the way you fight, it's exactly the same.
It's familiar.
Now, if you're a fan of FromSoft, you probably love that. However, one of my major criticisms of this game is the fact that From Software is starting a new IP, has opportunity to do things very differently, and they decided to go right down the path of all the previous games. I was expecting
I know it's coming.
something different in Elden Ring, and quite frankly, I didn't really get it. All I got was Dark Souls 4. Now, by the way, I like that. I like Dark Souls.
No, you
happy
don't.
to play Dark Souls
No, you
4.
don't. No,
But
you
man,
weren't.
If you were looking for something different, original, or veering off the beaten path of what FromSoft has done before,
It was a much more
you came
cinematic
to the
experience with a
wrong
much
place.
more
This
in-depth
game is
lore than anything that he had ever
absolutely Dark
done.
Souls 4,
Martin's
and
writing
it's
really
hilarious.
helped with this shit. What the hell are you
Now,
talking
one of the major
about?
criticisms that I have to say against that is if you're making a new franchise like they claim this was,
And it is.
wouldn't you think maybe this is
Oh, yeah, here's
ample
the chin
opportunity
scratch.
to look at the game engine from the previous games and say, how can we improve upon it? Adding a jump attack, okay, it's a new attack, it's incredibly OP. Adding the stagger system from Sekiro, okay, it's nice to have, it's something different and a new way to play. But how about you make the controls more fucking responsive?
I'll let him continue this rant for a little bit, and then I'm going to
Unresponsive
shut
controls are one of
the
the
shit
most
down.
Huge complaints that people have always levied against the From Software franchises. When you go to attack, there's a wind-up, a startup, before your guy will actually attack. When you go to roll, there's a delay before your character will roll. And as much as FromSoft fans and fanboys want to try to say it doesn't exist, it absolutely, positively does. All you need to do is play a Dark Souls game or Elden Ring, close it, and then open up
Here we go.
Neo 1 or 2. And you will see, here's a similar franchise, a similar style of game that's supposed to be balls to the wall hard, but when you dodge, your dodge comes out immediately. When you go to parry or block, immediate response. It's night and day from Software games. I don't know why From Software didn't take the opportunity to say, oh, new franchise, new rules, let's make our game more responsive. Because what I can definitively tell you, after playing this for 122 hours, is that some of these big enemies and boss fights would have been way better if you could actually immediately respond to what's going on the screen so you can react appropriately. The problem is because there's delay in the controls, a lot of stuff in the game ends up being very cheap. So what you'll notice is a lot of the bosses tend to have really long wind-up attacks. There's a boss coming at you, and man, he wants to hit you.
Okay, I'm gonna go counter his points before he starts going into clown mode here. Here's the thing about what he just said. Yes, there is delay. Yes, people will agree with this. No, FromSoft fans do not say it doesn't exist. They 100% believe it exists because they know it exists. They have known it exists for some time. Here's the thing though. To echo those fans, get good. Again, I've only played two of the Souls games and then one Souls-like game. But I have also played something called Monster Hunter for several years, actually almost a decade at this point. I had played Monster Hunter for a very long time. There's a thing in Monster Hunter called weapon weight. There's a thing in FromSoft games called weapon weight, swing weight, motion values. A term that Philly Boy here should be very familiar with, considering that he was once the best American Street Fighter player in like Evo 1995 or whatever the fuck. Startup frames, startup animations, startup delay, whatever the hell you want to call it, there is startup in these games. The fact that he can't react on command just shows that he has very slow reflexes when it comes to these. Because pretty much everybody who plays a FromSoft game knows how to compensate for that shit. They know about startup frames. They know about weapon swing animations. They know about motion values. If you're wielding a giant greatsword that's the size of you, it's going to take longer to get your swing off than if you were to be using two winky daggers. Like, if that's just how it goes. That's the thing that people have embraced about something like Monster Hunter for years, that every single weapon has different weapon weight and that they all attack at different speeds and they all do different things at those speeds. The greatsword is a very, very slow, very, very heavy weapon, but and it does not attack the same way as the dual swords do, which are very, very fast, and very, very mobile. You are very immobile when using a greatsword. Phil is complaining here about weapon weight and startup frame. And again, he should know better about this stuff because he played fighting games. He knows what startup animations are. He just doesn't want to actually acknowledge them. That you are vulnerable during startup animations, you're vulnerable during startup frames. That's just a thing that exists in most of these games. The fact that FromSoft actually still implements these games in these franchises is actually a good thing. It teaches players that your swings have weight behind them. Your weapons have weight behind them. You can't just go around swinging willy-nilly without having some sort of consequences to your actions. The reason he compares this to Neo and Neo 2, which by the way, he sucked at those too. I think he rage quit Neo 2 at some point. I forget. I had to look into that. But the reason he compares it to those games is because those are games that are easy to compare it to. In Neo and Neo 2, the combat there is much faster and more fluid. Straight up, he is right about that. It is much faster and more fluid, but that's because the enemies are also faster and more fluid. So you as a player had to match those speeds. It plays much more like an anime game than it does the weightiness of these high fantasy games that FromSoft has put out. This is the same thing with Code Vein, by the way. You can swing fast, your weapon swings in Code Vein are a bit faster than they would be in other games. And this, I think, is a product of Bandai Namco's development philosophy. I'm not sure if Neo is developed in-house by Namco Bandai. I know that they only publish the Souls games, but FromSoft has a very deliberate way of doing combat that incorporates very slow, deliberate weapon speeds, weapon swinging, so that you have to commit to each of your moves. You can't just recover from everything no matter what you do. This is why a lot of people die to panic rolling, because they end up using their stamina too much and then they can't move afterwards and then they end up getting hit. It's a thing that you just have to work at when you're playing these games. They require patience and they require analysis. You can't just go into every fight expecting to win just because of faster reflexes. Again, Monster Hunter. You have to look at the monster, see what their moves are, see what moves are safe to attack with, see what moves are unsafe, and then go in and attack. And then you also have to be mindful of your own movement as well. Whether or not you can attack from this, a certain angle, or whether or not you can attack from another angle, as well as your weapon's innate speed and its motion value. I'm not sure if motion values are a thing in this game, but just in general, motions and weapon swing speed and attack speed are important to take mind of. And yeah, him talking about the wind up here is just him going clown mode, so I'm gonna let him do his thing for a little bit.
So what does that boss do? Does he just come up and swing? No. That boss pulls out his giant fucking sword. He leans back like a pro baseball player. And he leans and leans and leans. It's coming. He's going to swing eventually. Oh. No, here we go. Oh, yeah. Oh. Hey, look over there. Huh, what's that? Ha ha ha. Boom. Hits you and you instantly die. And that happens all the time in Elden Ring. Why is there so much wind up in most of the delay or most of the attacks? Why are most of the attacks delayed? Because you can't fucking react to them. What you have to do is go to fight the boss, die a couple times, see their ridiculous attacks, and then say, now I will dodge early. And then you'll dodge them. It's nearly impossible to actually react to something the first time.
How the fuck is this a bad thing?
You have to see
this is like most bosses in most games. You learn their patterns and you beat them better.
Early.
That's what you do. That's how a boss works.
And that is not the case at all. And when I played those games, I would one-shot bosses with the parry system. Because as soon as I saw the attack...
He never switched out of high stance in Neo 2. Pointing that out as well. He never switched out of high stance and it gave him so much trouble. He never switched out of high stance. That's a game I don't know that much about because I haven't played it at all either, but I do know that's one thing that never happened when he played that game. He went to high stance and he just never switched out of it. And then he complained when he got bodied by enemies that could hit him when he was in high stance and that he couldn't just one shot with it.
Attack parry. Oh, comes out. Now, think how different this game could have been. Instead of having a million bosses that are all giant lumbering creatures that have to wind up, here I come. Oh, stagger delay. Instead, you could actually have fast bosses.
go play Bloodborne then. I don't know why he refuses to acknowledge that Bloodborne exists, but the whole thing that he's complaining about right now, with combat being slow and like the weapons having more weight and being more deliberate, that actually isn't a thing in Bloodborne, at least not as much. If you're using something like the Kirk hammer, it is, but because that's the Kirk hammer, it's not necessarily like meant to be fast. But like if you're using just like the basic the beast cleaver or like the threaded cane, those are faster weapons. You can use those just fine. And yeah, the bosses in Bloodborne are very, very fast. And I think a lot of people have complained about this as well, is that Elden Ring bosses tend to be the speed of Bloodborne while you're the speed of a Dark Souls player, which is an interesting dichotomy, but still something that you should compensate for when going into any fight. You just know that you're a slower, more deliberate player, and you can attack a boss more predictably that way. That's just the way of things. It's learn how to play the game better. Like again, Monster Hunter, the same thing. The monsters have attacks that come out slowly, and they also have attacks that come out very quickly. And then their attacks can come out even quicker when they're enraged. It all depends on what they're doing, and you have to read the situation appropriately in order to attack or to retreat properly. It's just a fact of getting good at the game. And this is a complaint of him not wanting to get good at the game, basically.
What a novel concept. A game where the bosses move quickly, and now you have to react to what they do with the parry system? Amazing. Other games have done it on PlayStation 5. That's the console I played the game on, by the way. So it's not an excuse that, PS5 has input delay. I played Sifu. Sifu does this.
He fucked up Sifu as well. He was really bad at Sifu too.
They did not want to have any kind of changes to the gameplay. They wanted it to play like Dark Souls to appeal to the fans of the franchise.
Or it's just what they'd like the combat to be in that kind of franchise. It's slow and deliberate attacking.
If you want to make Dark Souls 4, then call it Dark Souls 4. I don't think anyone would have complained if you made Dark Souls 4. Why call it Elden Ring? It's the same game. It literally is fucking Dark Souls 4 because it's just Dark Souls 3 with a few improvements and changes.
That were taken from Bloodborne. Also an entirely different cosmology. And an entirely different movement system. And a complete open world. There's so many things I could point out that why this is not just Dark Souls fucking 4. It's so easy to do so. And the entire reason why it's not called Dark Souls 4 to begin with is because Miyazaki didn't want to do another Dark Souls. He wanted to explore a different world. And he felt that the world of Dark Souls was a bit limited in scope. So he decided, I'm going to create a new world, and I'm going to have help from George R.R. Martin to do so. And he did. Elden Ring may be mechanically somewhat similar to Dark Souls, but it is not Dark Souls. It is completely different. It is its own thing that stands on its own alongside other Souls-like games, including Bloodborne, Code Vein, Neo, Hollow Knight. Plenty of these games are Souls-likes, but they are not Souls games. The only Souls games that exist are Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. That is it. Everything else is thematically different enough and mechanically different enough to stand on their own as their own intellectual property. It does not need to do so. It does not need to be called Dark Souls 4. If Miyazaki wanted to call it Dark Souls 4, he would want to make another Dark Souls, and he would have made it similar to the other Dark Souls in terms of the whole open level design as opposed to full open world. Full open world is unique to Elden Ring. That is what Elden Ring's claim to fame will be, that it is a full open world in the combat style known by From Software.
Okay? All right. Now, I could sit here and nitpick this game into oblivion. I'm not going to do that.
You already
what I'm
did.
Do is tell you what I really like and what I actually have gripes with in Elden Ring. Number one, even though a lot of people criticized it, I like the graphics. I think that the gothic style of the game is really nice.
Gothic? The fuck is he talking about? Bloodborne was gothic. Like this one was just confusing when I first heard it, that he called this game gothic style. I was like, it ain't gothic. It's like high fantasy. It is very much like Nordic. Just in a lot of ways, it is Nordic, not gothic. Bloodborne is gothic.
It fits it perfectly. I wasn't looking for Horizon Forbidden West level graphics in this game because of what I knew it was going to entail. I absolutely love the visual appeal of the game. The lighting effects, the effects during fights, really neat. Although, admittedly,
these are just easy things to talk about.
Effects going on, you can't see what the hell's going on. You have to redo that boss a bunch of times to understand. But man, it is visually appealing to me. It really looks cool. I actually really, really like the platforming, as I've already explained. I feel like they really improved that traversal aspect of the games from previous FromSoft games. This is the best one. Responsive, you can land where you want. Really well done in that regard.
You already talked about this too.
I really like the fact that
this is him like talking about stuff
when
he's
you're
already
playing
mentioned
the
before.
game, you have no idea what lies around any corner. It could be absolutely nothing. It could be a useful item or piece of crap. It could be a bunch of generic enemies. It could be a hidden boss. You don't know. And that's a cool aspect of the game that, unlike other Dark Souls games where you kind of know what to expect, in this game,
He's talking about this like he's never played an open world game before. I have no idea what the hell he's doing.
I really feel the strong point of the game is its dungeons. Its legacy dungeons. Let me clarify that. I do like the optional dungeons, and I think at first, when you're first getting into the game and you're trying to get into the swing of things, you'll want optional content to do. You want to level your character more, you want to look for rare items, you want to try to get maybe something for your build and see some cool bosses. But the dungeons get incredibly repetitive. The legacy dungeons, however, are all varied, different, unique, interesting, and I did not dislike a single one. Whether you're in
he's already talked about this.
Whether you're in a cavernous volcano, whether you're underground in a river of blood, it's all fun. And I think that the level design of these legacy dungeons is some of the best they've ever done in any game I've ever seen. Seriously.
This feels like he's just reading off a list of talking points that other reviewers have made. Everybody liked the legacy dungeons. The legacy dungeons have no complaints on them at all, from what I can tell.
I liked them all. I never
he's
had
just
a moment
echoing other reviewers.
Dungeons and I was like, oh man, I'm bored or this is annoying. However, the optional dungeons, that did happen. In the optional dungeons, they did feel confusing, repetitive, boring, annoying. Not in the legacy dungeons, okay? And I will say there were a few bosses. I'm not going to name them because obviously that's a ginormous spoiler. But there were a few bosses in this game that are kind of unique and fun, and I really liked them, okay? So, the strengths of this game are the graphics, the uniqueness of the
I don't even know which boss he's talking about because he could easily be talking about bosses that he hates.
Improvement to
just fighting them.
In the game. And
usually
really,
bosses he likes are the ones he beat in one
legacy
shot
dungeon
without
that I
any
was in.
effort.
Okay. Now for my gripes. Okay. Number one, this is just a nitpick, too similar to Dark Souls. If they really were going to make a new franchise, make it different. They did not. Number two.
Yes, they did.
Get rid of the delay in the controls. Make it more responsive. You can have better boss fights, better enemies that are fast if you can respond to them. Since you can't, the game is limited to mostly lumbering, slow enemies.
Go play really Bloodborne then. It has faster combat. It literally has faster combat.
Okay.
Why do you not know what Bloodborne is at this point? You played it twice.
Is good for the first half of the game. Okay? At some point, you're going to pass the initial 3 areas. You're going to start getting into this area called the Altus Plateau. This is right outside the capital city. And this is where the game does start to fall apart. Because once you get to the Altus Plateau, you're like, wow, it kind of looks like the first area, Limgrave. And yeah, it's kind of the same kind of exploration.
Altus Plateau is very much like a step. It has also autumnal colors. It is very different from Limgrave. Just from what I've seen of the game, it is very different from Limgrave.
And because of that, kind of boring in the open world segments. For example, you'll notice the same enemy reused again and again and again and again and again and again. I can't tell you how many troll giants and putrid tree monsters I killed in this playthrough. The ridiculous reuse of enemies gets really, really tired about halfway through the game, to the point when you start doing the open world exploration, you get bored with it. I've seen most of this in the game, and actually the end game stuff, the open world exploration, actually is kind of a cop-out. All they do is change the climate. It's the same kind of traversal, the same kind of enemies, the same kind of stuff. So
it's an open world. You can't, you have to, like, that's the whole point of the open world. It's supposed to, like,
oh, this is awesome.
Like, just in general, the open world is supposed to have, like, a lot of stuff in it. Not necessarily, like, have deep stuff in it. This guy's also been playing Skyrim, by the way, for months as well. For, like, the 4th time.
Enough variety at you. I mean, dragons are so abundant in this game.
Okay, I want to talk about this for a second, because his gripes with open world games are pretty much the same gripes that anybody has with any open world game, is that there is not enough variety within the open world itself. This is true. The thing is, though, he's complaining about this despite the fact that he plays a lot of open world games and never has those same complaints about those either. He never complains about it in Skyrim, which he's played like 4 times at this point. He didn't complain about it in either Horizon game. it's just a non-complaint, because when you get into an open world game, you kind of expect it to have that kind of thing going into it. I don't expect a huge enemy variety if I walk around in like in Hyrule and Breath of the Wild. You're going to be seeing the same types of enemies because that's like the kind of enemies that they have. They're just going to be in different locales to give you like location variety and different ways to approach. That's not a bad thing. That's just how open world games are designed. Like, you can't really do much. Like, it's a limitation of the open world game design. I can get into the game design aspect of open world games pretty easily. I have friends in game design, and I could just talk to them about this as well. But a limitation of open world game design is the fact that you had to reuse assets in order to populate your world. That's just a problem with it. But at the same time, it also gives the open world a bit of life if you manage to do so in a good way. That you're like never bored going in one particular direction, because you could be running into an enemy camp, you could be running into a friendly village, you could be running into any number of things in any direction in the open world game. The fact that he's complaining about enemy design in an open world game just makes no sense, because enemy design in any open world game is bound to be repetitive, because you can't have unique enemies in every single corner of the open world because of how assets are created. It would take way too much manpower and money to create new assets for pretty much every area, as opposed to just recoloring stuff or just changing the models a bit to on the same skeleton to make the area populated with new enemies, quote unquote, but like similar to enemies that you've already fought. They're just a bit more powerful. That's just how it works. That's how it works with pretty much any game, not even just open world games. Like, even most platformer games, they'll have you have the red, you have the regular green enemy, and then it becomes the red enemy, and then it becomes the blue enemy in the later stages to signify how powerful it has become. And you had to approach it differently because of that newfound power. It's just how games are designed. It's how enemies are designed. It's not a problem with the game. It's just the way things are. You can't have a unique enemy for every single encounter. Even some of the games like Monster Hunter that does that, they still have the same kind of, they still have the same monster. They just color it differently and give it different powers and maybe switch up its movesets. That still takes a long ass time to do, to program new moves onto an existing monster and give it different elemental abilities. Not to mention the cost of creating an entirely new monster from scratch either. It's just how things go. You can't have completely unique things in every single game and around every single corner. You just can't.
That at first they start off as giant boss fights, then they actually become regular enemies, and then by the end of the game, there's boss fights of dragons that are so easy because you fought it a million times, it feels like you're fighting a regular enemy, even though it has a boss meter. It's ridiculous reuse of assets.
Again,
now,
he was also 60 levels
other
overpowered by
franchises
most of the time
where
this happened.
Is a problem too, but in this game, it's jarring because never before in Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne has this really been an issue. It's only in Elden Ring, where once you get about halfway through, you end up getting really disappointed by the fact that the game reuses so much so often. The other major problem that I have with this game is that it was designed in a way that if you actually actively try to do all the meaningful content in it, at one point you will be overpowered and will be steamrolling through certain areas of the game no matter what.
This is a him problem. This is definitely a him problem, because he deliberately did this. Like he said at the beginning of the thing, he wanted to do a playthrough that explored every single area, every single part of the world, and did everything in one single run, which you don't need to do. But even then, he still redid stuff enough times that he was overleveled by a long shot fairly early on. And he did that deliberately. You can just decide not to spend the runes that you have on levels if you really want to. You can buy other things with them. You can buy supplies. You can spend stuff to upgrade with them if you have the smithing stones. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to spend your runes on levels. You don't have to spend your runes at all. Yet he did it at every opportunity, to the point where by the time that his playthrough was done, he was level 154. I forget. Yeah, he was level 154 when he faced Melania. And by the time he finished the game, he was level 162. So, and when you don't even need to be around a level 110 in order to do the final boss. Melania is a level 8, 90 to 110 boss fight herself, and she is an actual super boss. But the final boss of the game, was it Radagon and Elden Beast? You can beat those when you're level 90 or whatever. You can beat those when you're much lower level. And he was like way over leveled for those encounters and still died a lot. That should say something about how good he is at this game.
It's actually impossible if you are just actively playing, killing the enemies, leveling up with the runes, and doing everything you would normally do in a FromSoft game to not be over leveled by about the time you hit the halfway point of the game. When you, again, this halfway point seems to be like the critical point where the game starts to fall apart. I did the first major 3 areas, and I did 2 underground secret dungeons that were in said areas. I did a few optional boss fights that were very important to the story, and by the time that I got to the halfway point, everything was dying in a couple of hits. It was just absolutely, positively, ridiculously over the top, broken. It was not fun anymore.
I think that was a Lean Emmanuel ban. I think he just banned somebody in this chat when he was doing this.
I've never seen before, and everything was under leveled.
I recognize that look. I recognize those gestures. He banned somebody while he was doing this review.
FromSoft expects that some people will not want to do all the optional content. So because they're not doing it, you can't over level that area, because then that area wouldn't be fair. How are they going to get through that area if they didn't do the 2 optional dungeons that you did and leveled up a ton extra, right? So I can understand that, but then I have to say, then don't do it that way. Have it so that there's adaptive difficulty. When you reach a certain area, if you're at a certain level cap, all the enemies auto scale to that level cap, and now you have enemies that are challenging again. I understand that maybe that's not what they were going for, but it really stands to reason that if you're someone who wants to enjoy this game all in one go, you can't. You will get to points where the game becomes so impossibly over the top easy because you just chose to do all the content. And that's not acceptable. It's just not. It should be a game where if you do the content, you're rewarded, not you're actually feeling like sad that you did it.
Most people enjoy that feeling of being overpowered in a game like this. I don't know what his complaint is. A lot of people enjoy having that feeling of power in areas like this. Like, oh, this area used to kick my ass. Now I'm kicking its ass in like 2 hits. People like doing that. People like seeing that kind of progress with their character. If you really want to go the route of leveling at any opportunity to do so. I did so when I played Dark Souls 3. And yeah, some of the areas were still a bit easy for me. But I had a build that was very much built around magic and using an impractical weapon. I used a scythe in my playthrough. But like even then, like I still had fun playing it, even if I was overpowered for some stuff. That's not the problem. The problem that he's really talking about here is that he wants difficulty scaling. He wants enemy scaling or level scaling with an area when you play the game, which is really fucking stupid because if you go back to the beginning area, like the baby starting area, and everything is at your level, it just becomes impossible. Like it just becomes like everything is like super leveled and out to kill you, and it becomes really hard to progress that way. And you just have this constant train of progression, especially with a game like any FromSoft game where the stats have soft caps. It doesn't make sense to have that kind of scaling because you could go through the game and make everything hard on yourself by keeping yourself under level deliberately. You can make yourself over leveled and cakewalk through it. The game is as easy or difficult as you want it to be. This has been FromSoft's development mentality since Demon's Souls. You can just overpower yourself to the point where the game is a cakewalk, and they're fine with it. They put the system in the game to work that way, and every single JRPG works that way. Going through the end of Persona 5 with Lucifer trivialized every single fight in the game. I didn't care because I was still a fucking powerhouse using Lucifer. It was fun for me. So I don't understand his complaint here, where he says like, oh, things should scale with your level. They did that with Elder Scrolls Oblivion, and it was a shit show. It was like the worst thing ever because if you didn't scale your combat abilities, then you were fucking sunk. Like, because enemies would scale with your total level, not just your combat level. And it was the worst. Having easy baby starting areas and then big bad boss areas is like fundamental to an RPG about like, am I strong enough to take this area on? And if the area is too weak for you, but you still want to explore it, then you have an easier time exploring. If you want, you can just progress to a harder area by choice and see what's in that new area. It's not really that big of a deal. All right, I got to go. Quick, be right back. I'm back again. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't check up on shit.
'Cause
Let's
when I'm
continue.
getting to
We're
the
almost
end
done,
of
I
the
think.
game,
Hopefully.
and I'm
10
fighting
more
near
minutes.
endgame or
10 more
actual
minutes of this
endgame
bullshit.
bosses, okay? And I'm fighting them and beating them within 20 seconds. I'm not kidding. One of the hardest bosses in the game, I was able to beat in 20 seconds.
I forget the name of this boss. It was God. I think it might have been Godfrey. I forget.
That I had used during the game destroyed one of the end game bosses easily.
Yeah, because he just kept jumping he just kept jump attacking it.
This game.
He stunned the thing, but when it entered transformed and then jump attacked it like twice and it died.
Why am I?
He again overleveled by 40
story boss
and using super strong weapons that he looked up a guide to get.
Door to an optional dungeon, and that boss kills me for 3 hours, and I can't kill it. You see, there's no correspondence there. It's like they didn't bother scaling anything in the game at all, or even putting thought into it. They just threw a bunch of shit onto the map and said, "This will be higher level. This will not be." There's one major part of the map. It's called Caelid. One half of it is for your level at the beginning of the game. The other half is for end game. There is no indication of that anywhere in the game. You'll just be riding and immediately everything's much harder and just is killing you instantly. You're like, what's happened? I'm in the same area. It doesn't even say that. It would be one thing if the climate changed, the lighting changed, the setting changed, and the enemies changed. The same fucking enemies all of a sudden become insanely overpowered for no good reason. It really feels like they did not scale the game in any way logically. And that's a huge disappointment for me. Okay.
He just wants things to be easy no matter where he goes. That's what it really comes down to.
It's a mixed bag for me, honestly.
Mixed bag, of course.
And I say, okay,
he just wants everything to be easy wherever he goes. He doesn't care about that it scales according to his level. He just wants things to be scaled so that it's all easy for him to fight. He wants a cakewalk.
Every time that we walked into a new area and I didn't know what to expect and there was a cool new unique boss or whatever, I was like, ah. And then every time I walked into a new area and it was the same kind of open world boring exploration, it was the same enemies over and over. Oh my God, they're really reusing this boss a 7th time. Yes, those moments happened way too often.
You're not meant to fight the same boss 7 times, though.
Now, I don't want to go on forever.
You're supposed to fight them like maybe once or twice, and like twice or maybe 3 times if you run into them. Not do everything at once. Holy shit. In a nutshell, we still have 10 minutes left, you fuck.
I feel like it's a good first attempt at doing an open world game, and that FromSoft will likely do much better in the future. But this attempt is absolutely flawed. There are so many shortcomings to this game engine. The delay in the controls, this way too similarity to the previous games in the franchise. The fact that the content gets so repetitive because they reuse the assets so much and the open world fizzles out in the second half. The fact that really the legacy dungeons shine, but against them everything else in the game kind of looks lackluster because the legacy dungeons are so good. There's so many things to criticize. And the thing that really gets me is that since this game came out, there have been an overabundance of people who have reviewed this game and said it's a 10 out of 10. They'll be in their reviews criticizing the game, saying it has this thing that can be improved, and this thing that can be improved, and this thing.
I'm going to let him go on his little rant for a little bit before I talk about this shit as well.
Absolutely, positively, never going to do something like that. That's completely dishonest.
This has nothing to do with his review, by the way. This has nothing to do with his review. This is just him like ranting against other reviewers.
In fact, here's what I can tell you, and I know a ridiculous amount of people will disagree with me on this point, but this is my personal opinion. You have a right to disagree with it.
No, we don't.
I do not believe this is the best game FromSoft ever made. I still, to this day, after now completing Elden Ring, I feel that Dark Souls 1 is still the best game in this vein from FromSoftware. Why? Even though Dark Souls 1 has a lot of flaws, everywhere you go in the game seems fresh, interesting, new, exciting, varied. Most of the major bosses are really unique and different. I mean, one of the bosses is a fucking puzzle. It's not even a real boss, and it's glitched to shit. While other bosses are big time.
Oh yeah, Beta Chaos
patterns. It's a really neat and varied game.
Beta Chaos is a shit show. Nobody should ever speak about Beta Chaos in a positive light.
It'll still be ultra fun, and never once when I'm playing Dark Souls 1, even as hard as the game is,
Dark Souls 1 isn't hard.
I feel like I'm bored, I'm wasting my time, or this is all just repetitive bullshit.
That is a lie. That is a lie. He has complained about Dark Souls 1 every single time he's played it. I think he's only played maybe twice, maybe 3 times. I forget. I know he's played it at least twice. But every time I've seen like this is how you don't play of his Dark Souls 1 runs, he's complained. Throughout the entire thing, he's complained. But then again, he complains about everything. So it's not really sure whether or not those complaints are genuine, performative, or if he just hates playing video games in general. Don't know. I'm assuming it's because he hates playing video. But like, again, he ignores the existence of Bloodborne. Now, again, full disclosure, I have not played Bloodborne yet. That is the one FromSoft game that I am most excited to play. I've played, I have played, I think, a bit of Dark Souls 1 up to, I'm trying to think of where I stopped playing. I finished, I did a bit of a playthrough of Dark Souls 1, and I stopped after fighting the Moonlight Butterfly. After killing the Moonlight Butterfly, I stopped playing. Just because I decided to play it on as a way to memorialize the attack. Was it the? Why am I blanking on his name right now? The mangaka who wrote Berserk. That guy. Right after like the day of the announcement of his death, I decided to play Dark Souls 1 as a fresh character, trying to get as far as possible based around guts, as far as I could get with that character, as a way to Kentaro Miura, that was the name, Kentaro Miura, as a way to sort of memorialize Miura-san, just to pay homage to the guy. Because without Miura, we would not have a lot of Mia that we have today, including Dark Souls. Hidetaka Miyazaki, really, really looked up to Miura's work, which is why he based the world of Dark Souls around it. Like Lordran is very much based around the world of Berserk. It just is. But either way, like again, Phil completely ignores Bloodborne, which I feel is the best thing that FromSoft has put out, if only because that's the one thing that their combat still maintains the versatility of the Souls games, while also adding in a lot of fluidity and speed that the Souls games lacked. Sekiro is a different beast entirely, where while it is a very good game, it is also very limiting in what kind of combat style you play with in that game. You can only really do so much with the gadgets that you have at hand and with the parrying system that you are using within that game. Whereas with Bloodborne, you can go through many different types of builds with many different things. It really is like just like a faster, more fluid version of the Souls combat, and the Souls combat was already good to begin with. But again, we're going back to the complaint that he doesn't know how startup frames work, despite the fact that he's played fighting games for like over a decade. Actually, like 20 years at this point. Either way, well, let's move on.
Not once in Dark Souls do I feel like that. I felt that way too many times in Elden Ring. For all of its great things that it does and its improvements to the franchise, I shouldn't be bored playing a game like this. And I was a lot playing Elden Ring. That's not good. There should not have been so much repetition and so much emptiness and so much boredom with the open world and reuse of enemies and assets that I felt like I had a whole stream that just didn't get anywhere and was a waste of my time. I don't ever feel like that when I play Dark Souls 1. Okay? So
then why don't you play it again? You seem to like it so much. Why don't you play it again?
I think Elden Ring is the second best FromSoft game ever made. I actually think you got Dark Souls 1 and then you got Elden Ring. So if that doesn't say that I don't...
What about Bloodborne? What about Bloodborne? Oh yeah, I forgot he hated Bloodborne because he rage quit at Ludwig. I forgot he rage quit at Ludwig.
Unique, fun, the lore, oh god, the lore. It's confusing as shit, just like any other Dark Souls.
He had to have the lore spoon-fed to him by his chat, by the way. He read item descriptions and didn't understand them at all. One of the biggest hangups that he had before was that he didn't understand that Marika was also Radagon, which it's never made clear. Spoiler for that, by the way. Queen Marika is also Radagon. They're the same entity. But he also thought that for some reason Radagon married himself, even though he never did. Radagon married Renala. And Renala is not Marika. Marika is Marika. And Marika and Radagon are like technically the same person, or two halves of the same person. It's never made clear what their relationship is, other than the fact that they are one and the same. They are one and the same. I think I posited the theory that Radagon is Marika's heartless and Marika is a nobody, which would lead into a whole bunch of other bullshit that I really don't want to get into. That implies that maybe Nomura had a hand in writing this shit too. and I'd rather not think about that. But yeah, he got hung up on that a lot, and it's like, what? Why did he marry? Why did he marry himself? Like he didn't. He married Renala. He married Renala, not Marika. And he just that never really sunk with him. He just didn't care about the lore at all, and things just like very confusing. Whenever it's like most FromSoft games, the lore is pretty clear. You just have to read a little bit of it. Like even the fucking lore of like New Lothric or whatever it is, Lothric in Dark Souls 3 is clear enough. Like the only time it gets sort of muddy is with Bloodborne. But that's only because they sort of mix they mix the gothic horror with eldritch horror and Rakasic horror, and that's when it gets sort of muddy. But you still have like a bunch of like if you piece together like a complete timeline of the events of Bloodborne, you get a full complete picture of like how things got to the way they are, with some open-ended questions regarding the old ones, which is how it should be, because the old ones are supposed to be unknowable. But whatever, let's keep going.
Game, but at the very same time, once you get into it and you start to research it and you're reading the item descriptions and you're trying to make ends meet, there's people putting family trees online of all the characters in the game. Oh my god, it's deep lore, it's interesting, it's fun. I like that about these games that FromSoft puts.
He didn't give a shit about any of it. He didn't give a shit about any of it though.
I had a ton of fun playing Elden Ring, but I shouldn't be bored with a game that's supposed to be constantly challenging me and constantly risking death, and this game absolutely bored me to tears in certain parts. Why am I so ridiculously overpowered when all I did was the content you put in front of me?
Because you deliberately overleveled. You went out of your way to overlevel. Like this was pointed out several times in the playthrough, that he would just stall for hours, like doing shit he didn't need to do just so he could get runes and overlevel stuff just by that one little bit more. Like he would just do that all the time. He stalled so much during this playthrough. Like that's why this happened, because he just stalled all the time.
To do, should I have nerfed my experience? Should I have purposely said, oh, well, I've been told I should skip a bunch of content that's right here and looks interesting because I don't want to have the end game be overleveled? Ridiculous. It's poor game design. It really is.
No, it's not. You just don't know how game design works. You just don't know how game design works.
Inferior, poor game design. Dark Souls 1 actually does it better in this regard, and that's why I feel this.
Dark Souls 1 still had leveling areas where you could farm up a whole bunch of souls.
The other thing is, people want me to give this game a number review. Excuse me.
Oh yeah, he can't stop thinking about the fucking money. So that was a Freudian slip right there. People want me to give this game a money review. No, shut the fuck up. No, like yeah, like that was a slip if I ever heard one there, Philly boy.
So many people screaming, Phil, what is it? It's not going to be a 10 out of 10 because you say the game has flaws. It's not. Is it going to be 8 out of 10? Is it a 9 out of 10?
Nobody gives a shit about what number score he's going to give it. And he doesn't give it one anyway because he decides to fence it.
Example why we need to stop giving arbitrary number scores to video games. Because if you're telling me that the game has flaws, you admit it in your review, and you say the game is a 10 out of 10.
Oh, we're revisiting this.
Disservice to everyone ever who listens to or even weighs and balances that review. We have a website right now, Metacritic, right?
He tries to explain Metacritic to people who already know what Metacritic is.
And it's saying Elden Ring is one of the best games ever made. Yet the reviews criticize the game. It doesn't make sense. People are pussies and won't actually be honest. They get so caught up in hype.
Then why don't you give it a number? If you sack up and give it a fucking number, buddy.
Be improved and things that bother them. That is completely dishonest, in my opinion. Maybe you like reviewers out there that will get lost in the hype and 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, best game I ever played, yet then they say the game's not perfect and it has all these issues. I'm not like that. I absolutely refuse to say that this game is perfect. It's not. It has tons of flaws, tons of room for improvement, and in my opinion, it's not even the best From Software game. How could it be a 10 out of fucking 10, even though I enjoyed the hell out of it? It's not. So, I'm here to tell you, if you like previous FromSoft games,
how much time do we have left?
If you enjoyed Dark Souls 1 through 3,
we have 4 minutes. We have 5 minutes of this shit.
If you're looking for the entry point to jump into this franchise, this may be it, because as I explained, you can actually do things in any order you want. If you can't beat this, go over here and do this. If you can't beat that, there's an optional dungeon.
And he's okay. So I feel this is a good point because I don't think he's going to go visit this point again. Hopefully he's not. About his opinion regarding review scores. I don't understand why he doesn't just give it a score to begin with, because he used to do that. He even did it for his like fucking food reviews back in the day. The point is though, like here's the thing. Like most things with Phil, a broken clock is right twice a day. And in this case, he is right about one thing, and that Metacritic's weighting of review scores is usually detrimental to the reviews themselves. They are not detrimental to the object of the review. Like if somebody who has a 5-point scale, like I rate this game 4 stars out of 5, or I get this game out of my 5 points of like hated it, disliked it, liked it, loved it. I liked this game, like that kind of thing. I think GameRanks does that. Then like Metacritic will take that score and convert it into a numerical value. That is kind of horseshit. The thing is, though, people use that sort of like empirical measurement as a way to gauge public opinion. It doesn't matter if the number score doesn't add up or isn't like absolutely like 100% foolproof. It's just a quantifiable way of measuring your own opinion about something. Like this game is a 10 out of 10 for me, like that kind of thing. Like that means like I wholeheartedly approve of this game. I believe that it is a straight up masterpiece. It is a must play game because no game is without flaws. None, like bar none. There is no game that exists without flaws. As far as like just a recent example of something that I can name that I know other people will go down my throat for me. Not even recent. Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal as an extension of that. I played through all of Persona 5 with a guide to get all the confidants and to get like all the summons that I wanted, which is why I ended up with Lucifer at the end of the game and why I was able to cakewalk through most of the game. The thing is, having played it that way and having played it through all that, I give the game basically a soft 7 out of 10. Because I feel that like, and that's just my personal opinion. That's also weighting my opinion down on the fact that I do not like Persona games. I think that Persona games are poorly paced. Whereas somebody else could say, I disagree with you. I believe this game is a 9 out of 10. And I'm like, okay, that's your opinion. You can like the things that I disliked about them. And there are plenty of people that do. There are plenty of people that do not see the pacing issues with Persona 5. There are plenty of people that don't like the combat of Persona 5, even though that's what I personally loved. There are plenty of people who like different aspects of a game. And what they decide to quantify it as in their mind on a 10-point scale matters, at least to them and to the people who listen to their opinion. There's a reason why people value the opinion of Angry Joe more than they value the opinion of IGN. And it isn't just because IGN is a bad publisher. I'm not going to get into that. It's because IGN, you do not have a good barometer of quality for any of their reviews because it is an IGN review. It is not a Joe Vargas review. Now with Joe Vargas or Angry Joe, you know exactly where he stands, what he likes, what he doesn't like. So if a game is able to get past his sensibilities about what he typically doesn't like in a game, you can look at that same game and say, well, damn, this is a pretty good game. I can trust his review of it, that if he managed to like it despite his misgivings, then I might like it too. And it's also the way that you can also gauge reviews differently, where it's like, oh, if this reviewer gave this game a 10 out of 10, but he usually likes things that I despise, so I'm going to stay away from this game because he liked all this stuff about it. Those numbers matter. They do not matter in the same, like, he went on a rant about this, by the way, a few weeks ago, or not even a week ago, that the reason why he doesn't give anything a 10 out of 10 and why he thinks nothing should ever get a 10 out of 10 is because of quote unquote math. That if you give a game a 10 out of 10, that you are implying that it is flawless 100%. That grading system is very much based on academia. That is not necessarily based on opinion, which is what most reviews are. It's just a matter that he doesn't understand how reviews work or how review scores work or how people reading review scores weight them. Are there some people who look at the Metacritic number as just the empirical number and say, like, well, I'm going to base my purchases based on that? Yes, there are. But that's their decision. You don't need to police the Metacritic for their sake. Not that he cares anyway. He simultaneously cares a lot about, and it does not care about reviews. Straight up, to put that out there as well. He will only care about reviews if the reviews for a game are good, so that will be a gauge of, oh, I should play this game to actually get more people into my stream to give me more money. That's the only reason why he cares about reviews in the first place. as far as what he does with review scores. Afterwards, he's like, oh, I don't care about review scores. I play things regardless of review scores. You shouldn't care about review scores. You should only listen to like, his opinion is you should not care about review scores because those people are paid off. You should care about my opinion because I was not paid off, which shows a fundamental misunderstanding about how the games games publication industry works at all. And granted, I don't know much about it, but I know a damn lot more than he does, because I've actually listened to journalists talk about like the inner workings of the industry. I've listened to people who worked with journalists. I've listened to like, former journalists talk about it. There is some shady shit that goes on, not as much as he thinks it does, but he only says that kind of thing so that people will listen to him and him alone and like watch his playthrough, give him views and give him revenue. That's the only thing that matters to him. That's why he says to not care about game reviews, even though he himself cares about game reviews to determine which games he is going to play on the stream.
Here, and there's a new open world area to explore over here. You can essentially play it however you want till you are leveled enough to beat any challenge in the game. And that's a cool thing. At the very same time, the game is so cryptic with what you're supposed to be doing that if you're not using a guide, I could not imagine a newcomer to the series, or a newcomer to any FromSoft game, playing this as their very first FromSoft game and not becoming at least incredibly frustrated, if not so confused, they absolutely have to use a guide to beat the game.
Not true. I know plenty of people like within the VTuber community who had never played a FromSoft game before, picked up Elden Ring and loved it. They did not use a guide. They actually told their community not to spoil them anything so they could discover things on their own. And they absolutely 100% loved this game and believed it was a very good entry point to get into FromSoft games in general. The original Dark Souls was a good jumping off point. Bloodborne is a bit too difficult for most people. The original Dark Souls is very, very good. Dark Souls 2 is an absolute fucking mess. And Dark Souls 3 is a masterpiece. Elden Ring is a good gateway and it is a masterpiece in its own right. You can play this game without playing any other FromSoft game before it. He treats other players and other gamers and his audience as if they're like incredibly stupid and that they need their hands held at all times for games like this because he's projecting. This is what he does. This is how he plays the game. He does not go into these games blind. Much as he likes to say it, he does not go into them blind, or at least not completely blind. He will look up guides. He will rely on his chat who have beaten the game before him, and he will just always look up stuff for look for help or look for ways to cheese the game so that he can progress through it and get it done as quickly as possible to get another one off the conveyor belt, another one off the checklist. Like, that's just how he rolls.
I'm just saying it. A lot of people also won't admit that. Oh, this game. No, you can't beat this game without help if you're a newbie. There's
you can.
No way you'll fucking
again, I just said you can.
Cryptic. It doesn't explain enough.
Just because you don't understand shit doesn't mean other players don't understand shit. You're an idiot.
If you are looking for an actual game that has an insane amount of content and you've always wanted to jump into a FromSoft game before and you felt that the difficulty was too much for you, Elden Ring is likely your game, but understand your experience will be different than someone who's played FromSoft games before and who are already coming in with all this prerequisite knowledge of how the franchise works. You're not going to have that. You're going to have to start learning all this shit from scratch. It's as if someone who already knows Greek goes to watch a movie where this Greek is spoken. Well, you go to the movie, you don't speak Greek. So you're trying to watch it and understand it. I don't get it.
Subtitles exist. This entire example is so fucking stupid. Subtitles exist.
Right? That's basically Elden Ring in a nutshell. You have to have that prerequisite knowledge or else you're going to be flubbing it, not knowing what the hell you're supposed to do.
The game explains enough that you know what to do and where to go that as a new player.
And I still think that both people who like FromSoft and never played FromSoft would be able to buy it and enjoy it. But man, it needs to be improved upon. I was very disappointed with some parts of this game, and I don't understand why people give FromSoft a pass. And this is how I'm going to end the review. I have to address the elephant in the room. People keep kissing FromSoft's butt way too much. It seems like this company can do no wrong. You can't criticize a FromSoft game because if you do, the rabid fans come out in droves. Oh, maybe the summons are a little bit overpowered in this game. Oh my God, don't use it. It's ridiculous.
He's complaining about get-gooders at this point, and get-gooders are insufferable, and nobody likes get-gooders. Most of the FromSoft community doesn't like get-gooders. They hate them. Like, get-gooders ruin the community. like I will straight up admit that I have been afraid to play some of the Souls games on stream, because of get gooders. They're insufferable, they're annoying, and they ruin the game. And a lot of people, like, it's because this game has gotten more exposure than like most of the other FromSoft games. Get gooders' voices are louder, but then there are also more people stamping them down and saying you can play the game however you wish to play the game. Summons are a bit overpowered, yes, but there's nothing stopping you from using them. They're a mechanic in the game. Most players will say if you feel like you need to summon, then go use a summon. It's part of the game. Enjoy the game how you want to play it. The only time they say don't use a summon is if you're doing something like fighting Melania, and that is because of her mechanic of life stealing, where if she hits, where the summon doesn't really have a concept of self-preservation and will just tank hits for you, which will mean Melania will recover a lot of health just from wailing on your summon, or like your Ashe, unless the summon is another competent player, like let me solo her. But if they're not like let me solo her or just a friend or whatever who's fighting Melania with you, and it's like an Ash of War or whatever, you're just summoning like an NPC, then don't be surprised when Melania is harder to beat because they keep wailing on the summon and gaining their health back. Like that's just how that one fight works. But for the most part, people are saying, like, yeah, use summons. Like, here's an easier way to beat this boss if you're having trouble. FromSoft players are very helpful for the most part. Again, there are some get gooders in the community, but FromSoft players, as I've gotten to experience more of them and talk to more of them, are usually very helpful in terms of like, oh, here's a weapon that you should use. Have you tried this tactic against this boss? Have you tried going to this place because there's something interesting there that you might find? Or if you just want to talk lore, they'll be more than happy to sit down with you and explain stuff about the lore that you never knew about. Like Vati Vidya is one of the best members of the FromSoft community, and I look up to his videos a lot. And if I feel like he's just like a really cool, easygoing person to talk to about FromSoft lore. Like if I were to sit down and have a chat with him, he's like one of the few people that I would love to chat with about that kind of thing. But like, yeah, he's complaining, but like the complaint here is like kind of falling on deaf ears because everybody knows that get gooders are like insufferable. It's not that new of a concept. And like, yeah, like some people say like, oh yeah, the game is perfect. Like, just, get good or whatever. It's like, no, there are flaws with the game. Some stuff is like overtuned. Some stuff is undertuned. One of the biggest flaws with the game that people talked about before was Star Scourge Radahn, who was way overtuned for the level that he was at in the game for when you were able to confront him. He was deliberately overtuned and hard to deal with because of that. So then when they nerfed him, a lot of people said, well, you nerfed him too hard. And so then FromSoft undid the nerf. But because they buffed a bunch of other things, Star Scourge Radahn was now suddenly more manageable to deal with because of all the other things they had buffed around the game without touching Radahn. And he just became easier, and people came with new tactics to beat him with based on the easier stuff that they found. And that's just how the game evolves. Like, you just find more stuff to do, find new ways to beat things, and people will share their strategies online. There have been so many strategies I have seen online, by the way, of how to get runes quicker, or like a broken build, or like a fun build for the memes, like that kind of thing. The community is great, and his complaint here is just one specific aspect of the community that nobody likes.
Play this game however you want. Doesn't matter if you use summons, it doesn't matter if you dual wield, it doesn't matter if you use magic. It's all gravy. It's in the game to be used. Of course, summons are very powerful in the game, and if you use them, they make the game way easier. So if you're someone who's played a FromSoft game before, you probably don't want to use summons because it's too easy. But if you want to challenge yourself, which is what I did, I didn't use summons in my playthrough. I legitimately beat all the hardest bosses in the game, never summoning or even using Ashes of War.
He did summon once. He used the jellyfish against Margit. As far as I can tell, that is the only time he had ever summoned in this game. There's footage online of him using it too, so he can't deny this guy. He did use a summon against Margit. He likes to try to erase this part of it because even I forgot about this until I saw a video on it. But no, he did use a summon against Margit. He used the jellyfish. Every other boss, though, yeah, he is correct. He did not use summons. Instead, he just spammed jump R2. He just spammed jump attacks. Because yeah, like, oh, I didn't cheese the game in this way. I cheesed it in another way. The point is that he still cheesed the game, and he's trying to act all proud that he didn't cheese it when he totally did. Like, I have no problem with people saying, with people like saying like they beat the game using just jump attacks, because that's a valid tactic. It's kind of cheap, but it's a valid tactic. Phil tries to gloat about the fact that he played the game fair and square, when in reality is that he cheesed it just as much as anybody else does who doesn't know what they're doing with the game and just wants to get through it because they want to have a fun time exploring the story. Except he didn't want to have a fun time exploring the story. He just wanted to have a time gathering money for it. Like, that's just why he played it. But he's like, yeah, he went through the game spamming jump R2 just because he could. And that was a detriment to the playthrough because it made watching him almost unbearable. Like, I tried watching some of his Elden Ring streams, and they were just really difficult to watch. Like, it was so horrible and boring. Not to like talk about like the quality of his streams. I'm not doing that today. But his gameplay was just really, really like boring and repetitive and just like not fun to watch at all. It was like just not interesting. At least if you watch somebody else who uses like jump attack spam, they're more charismatic about it and they're more funny about it. Like, he was not. Like, he just seemed bored the entire time, and he didn't do anything to try to make the gameplay interesting or more engaging at all. Not necessarily more difficult, but just more engaging. Like, he could have just like, slung spells for a little bit, but he decided not to do that. He just decided to do jump attack spam for everything in the game that he could use it against. And even in the final boss fight, when he fought the Elden Beast, he would just do jump attack spam and complain when it didn't work, and he got his ass beat by light spear. But, whatever.
I just said, fuck it. I'm just going to try to use boss weapons and beat it like it's Dark Souls, and I did. And that was a lot more challenge, and it made the playthrough a lot more meaningful and fun to me. To you, maybe not. Use absolutely everything you want to beat the game. Don't let anyone tell you not to do that, because it's bullshit. No one should be gatekeeping a game like this. It's your experience with the game.
He's still going on this rant about get gooders. I just wanted to get my side in before we started talking about this. But either way, it's still pointless to talk about this because, again, nobody likes get gooders.
Right? Don't let these fanboys tell you down and talk to you and say, oh, don't you dare do it this way or that way, okay? But also, don't let the fanboys outright telling you the game's perfect make you think it is. It's not. There's no way you can.
There's a lot of people that have admitted the flaws of what the game actually are. Even the fanboys have done so. His quote-unquote imaginary fanboys.
It's got issues with balance. And anyone who plays the game will admit it, but if they tell you the game's perfect, they're outright lying. Okay?
Nobody is saying the game is perfect.
Review of Elden Ring. I hope now you kind of understand, and maybe you want to get it now, maybe you don't. Likely you already did if you were interested, because the game's been out for 2.5 months, and it took me that damn long to beat it. But I hope that you found some actual value in this review, and I want to say thank you for watching. Thanks, everyone. Peace out.
Okay, well, that shit is fucking over with. Give me 1 second.
I'll be honest.
There we go. I don't want to start off another. Oh, God. I am so unprofessional. I'm not cutting this out, by the way. I don't know how to edit. So this is all going up as one single. I apologize, but this is all going up as one single. All right. So anyway, all right. So, one of the things that I like. There's so much wrong with what he said there. Like, I think I went over everything that I wanted to go over point for point about what was like wrong with what he said there and why he was kind of inaccurate with his shit. But like, some of the stuff that I couldn't really help getting into is talking about the fact that like how he addresses things is just from his perspective alone. And I can say like, oh, that's from every reviewer's perspective, but his perspective from this game is that he didn't like the game to begin with. He only played it to get views. He only played it because people wanted to play it and to get money. That was the driving reason for him to play Elden Ring. He truly doesn't like games like this, or he never did to begin with, and it's hard to tell at this point. But yeah, he just like, his perspective is basically the fact that, like, oh, I played it in this certain way by I destroyed the experience for myself, and I don't like it anymore. Where's that fuck? Like, I make fun of this quote all the fucking time. Let me see. Hold on a second. Let's see. See the ninja. I forgot what the actual code of ninja. Okay, here we go. This fucking quote from Ninja, fucking Tyler Blevins. God damn. As much as I hate Ninja, but it's fucking hilarious that he said this shit. Let's see. You cheated not only the game, but yourself. You didn't grow, you didn't improve. You took a shortcut and gained nothing. You experienced a hollow victory. Nothing was risked and nothing was gained. It's sad that you don't know the difference of what true gamers are. Yeah. We said that originally. I think there was a... No, this wasn't Ninja that said. This was like just some Twitter user that said that you cheated not only the game but yourself. It was attributed to Ninja later on. But yeah, like this entire thing is basically like a lot of people's criticism about DSP's playthrough of the game is that quote that he cheated not only the game but himself. And the thing is, he really didn't, because DSP didn't care about the game to begin with. Not really. Like this review proves that he really didn't care about the game that he was working on. He just wanted to like have the game to play. That's something in the background to do while he gained money, like he usually does. But I feel that I feel that I needed to do this because he like talks so much about how he understands game design, how he understands like what makes a good game when really he doesn't know fucking shit. I don't know much either. I will admit that I don't know much either. I have a few friends in game development, like I said before, but I don't know much about like that side of things in general. But I know more than he does, and like, I think pretty much most people know more than he does in terms of how open worlds are designed, the kind of success that they had to make for an open world design, and the kind of things that they can do within those constraints. And Bloodborne and Elden Ring did a fine job within these constraints. That's why people gave it like a 10 out of 10 review, because it is a masterpiece. It is a very good open world game, probably the best open world game to exist so far, at least in most people's eyes. It's very, very good. As my friends and I have said, it is Breath of the Wild, but with meaningful gameplay. It is that good. Again, I have not played it. I will plan on playing it. It's just that I haven't gotten around to buying it yet because I have been busy doing other things and playing those things as well. But either way, like his opinions on Elden Ring are just like almost negligible at this point, because again, he took like 2.5 months to beat the game, 120 hours of doing everything in the cheesiest and easiest way possible, and then at the end of the day he just sits there and thinks he has the right to complain. It's like, oh, the game was too easy. Yeah, it was easy because you cheesed it. It's like taking a big gulp of piping hot soup and then complain that you burnt, and that you complain that the soup was so hot that you burnt your tongue. It's like, yeah, what the fuck do you think was gonna happen, asshole? You burnt your tongue because you drank the hot soup. Like, his complaints are just really weird about this kind of thing, and it shows that he really doesn't have a lot of self-awareness and thinks that his experience will be common to most of the people who have played the game, which I can assure you they're not. Most people that I've known did not overlevel themselves to that degree, and also did not die that much. The fact that he died a total of 875 times while being overleveled, while using broken builds, should tell you something about his skills at the game, and why he really shouldn't be trusted on his opinion of it. But that's just my own take on things right now. Like, I go on all day about how I think DSP is, and I honestly could make more videos like this if I really wanted to. It's just easy content at this point, to try just to shit on DSP. Like, that's the one thing that he's kind of right about. But it wouldn't be easy to shit on him if he wasn't such like an easy person to shit on. Like, it wouldn't be easy to shit on him if he actually was entertaining and didn't say stupid shit like this 45-minute review that I have expanded into a 2-hour video. But either way, that will be it for me for today. If you managed to sit through all this with me, I congratulate you. I apologize for the breaks, like a couple times during that whole thing, and I apologize for the length of this video. I don't know if I will do detractor content in the future. I could. Depending on how this video is received, I could do it. It really is just like, whether or not I feel like doing it, because I could just, critique some of his smaller videos as well, in just like this sort of like more relaxed react content, like a react video like this, where I just look at some of his older videos and just give a perspective on those. And I could bring friends along with me who don't know anything about DSP to talk about them with. Obviously everything that I do and everything that I do in future, including this video, is protected under fair use, so Phil can eat shit in regards to that. If not, I can always just show the fair use doctrine and, you know, have that in there. But no, everything in here is protected by fair use, because I have used his content for critique and analysis and have made it more transformative because this is my own commentary on his takes regarding Elden Ring. So it is, again, not content, that's creative liberties, commentary, critique, fair use, eat shit. Have a good day, guys. Bye.